Those disciples finally saw the reality around them and made their determination to put everything on the line. In this instant, they forgot their terror. They only had one thought: to go all out killing. Long Chen's words were very clear. Others could help you for a moment, but they couldn't help you for a lifetime. If you wanted to get stronger, you had to rely on yourself. He could only give them a chance to take a breath. But this chance was exceptionally precious. He had helped them escape from the bindings of their terror and make their resolve. Yes, just like this. Go all out and show those bastards who look down on us just whose talent isn't high enough. What are geniuses there for? To be trampled upon. Use the weapons in your hands to give them vicious slaps in the face. Make sure those slaps are fierce enough to show your mettle. Encouraged Guoran. He finally had an opening to raise these disciples' fighting spirit. By saying this, he drew them closer to the Dragonblood Legion. Seeing this group of disciples, Guoran and the others thought of themselves. Their talent had also been lacking, and the resources they had were mediocre. It was Long Chen who had pulled them to their current height. It aroused their sympathy to see these people being looked down upon and tossed aside. The entire Dragonblood Legion had been thinking about helping them from the start. Experts needed a chance to become experts. In the same way, if they hadn't encountered Long Chen back then let alone coming to the Central Plains, they would probably still be mediocre existences in the Eastern Wasteland. So Long Chen's conduct inspired them as well. Even after all this time, he hadn't forgotten his original heart. This boss of theirs was still the same boss who made decisions according to his original heart. Once 30,000 disciples went all out, it was an extremely powerful sight. Once a person chose to put their life on the line, they would be able to unleash several times their normal combat power. Long Chen charged with the Dragonblood warriors, and the Bone Spur Devil Apes were slaughtered easily. Hua Long was especially powerful. With each fire breath, it killed a wave of them. There was no need for Long Chen to do anything. Behind him, Gu Yang and the others were slaughtering them as well. These Bone Spur Devil Apes were actually only at the level of ordinary sea expansion experts. The reason they had managed to kill so many people at the beginning was because those people had been too terrified to fight properly. They had never seen such terrifying beasts, nor had they ever seen a person by their side get torn apart. Even the ordinary disciples behind the Dragonblood Legion were dominating them now that they had shed their shackles of terror and were releasing their true power. Working together, there wasn't much threat to them. They started to get in a rhythm. By the time Tang Wan'er stopped offering them any further support with her wind blades, they were able to hold their own. Their original panic was gone, and within this slaughter, they gradually came to understand the feeling of a life-and-death battle. Seeing this, Long Chen nodded. He was a human, not a god. He could only do this much. As for how many of them could survive, that would be up to how hardy their lives were. Qian Duo was following Guoran. He suddenly realized that every single person in the Dragonblood Legion was incredibly powerful. They never needed a second move to kill a Bone Spur Devil Ape. Compared to the experts from the other factions, they were completely different. Their moves weren't flashy and grand. Instead, they were sharp and ruthless. Each of their moves were unleashed with the intent to kill the Bone Spur Devil Apes in the fastest, most effortless manner. The valley was 1,000 miles wide, and Bone Spur Devil Apes crashed down upon them from every direction. They had no choice but to quicken their steps, because if they slowed down, it would become even more difficult. Each faction had sent their top experts to the front to open a path. Those elite disciples were all powerful. This was the only way for the whole faction to continue at the same speed. Within the Elder Hall, the Hall Master praised, "This Long Chen truly is incredible." With just a few words, he dispelled their terror and roused their courage. Just what level of charisma does that require? Once the trial is over, the disciples that live will definitely become his loyal followers. It's unknown if Long Chen has some plan for them or if he really is so gallant. If it's the former, then his scheming ability really runs deep. He's already so powerful, and he has such a group of loyal followers. If he uses them for good, it could benefit the whole world, but if he uses them for evil, he won't. Based on what I know about him, although he doesn't show any arrogance on the surface, He is actually extremely prideful and unyielding. He would disdain doing such things. Furthermore, he cares deeply about relationships and treats his people very well. In terms of moral quality, there is definitely no problem, said Li Changfeng. Since you're so sure, I'm at ease. The hall master smiled. No, I don't dare to say anything for sure. Although there's no problem with his moral quality, he's too stubborn. Once he decides something, he won't change his mind even in death. He's a master at causing trouble. With my frail old bones, I don't dare to guarantee anything about him, said Li Changfeng with a bitter smile. We aren't lacking geniuses, but we are lacking good leaders. The 5 heavenly geniuses from the Central Plains have great talent and strength, and the Tao sect places high hopes on them. But now that Long Chen has arrived, the original plan has to be changed. The 4 regions' disciples used to just be green leaves led by the Central Plains disciples. But now a few new variables have entered the equation, said the hallmaster. In truth, the inner sect trial was the playing field for the Central Plains disciples. The 4 regions' disciples were nothing more than extras. Then the amount of core disciple spots this time? There originally shouldn't have been a spot for Long Chen, but our competition must be fair. If Long Chen really can keep up with the other 5 until the end, bring out an extra one for him, said the hallmaster. But the number of the core disciple spots has already been set. And the law enforcement hall, Li Changfeng hesitated. It's fine. Since we've chosen not to endure any longer, we have to be unyielding as well. We've restrained ourselves for so long that they think we're easy to bully. But still, it's too early to say anything. Long Chen's charisma might be strong and he has high leadership abilities, but in terms of power he probably can't compare to the Central Plains heavenly geniuses. After all, their foundations are too far apart. Those heavenly geniuses are monsters, and the power they've displayed is just the tip of the iceberg, said the hallmaster. Thinking about it, the other elders agreed. Although Long Chen might be at the peak of the 4 regions' disciples, in front of the Central Plains heavenly geniuses, he was at too much of a disadvantage. But the hallmaster, Li Changfeng, and a few others thought of something else. Although right now, Long Chen hadn't shown enough power to stand on the same level as the Central Plains monsters, the patriarch had been disturbed because of his existence. In other words, things definitely weren't as simple as they thought. In truth, both the hallmaster and Li Changfeng hoped for Long Chen to put on a powerful enough display for the Elder Hall to fight for an extra core disciple spot for him. Helping Long Chen was helping themselves. The Elder Hall couldn't directly clash against the Law Enforcement Hall, but they could use Long Chen to display their tough position and establish their own prestige. The Elder Hall had no choice but to be tough. Otherwise, the Law Enforcement Hall would become even more arrogant and suppress them even more fiercely. Long Chen was their best weapon against them. Long Chen didn't know there were so many people discussing him. Right now, he was leading the Dragon Blood Legion forward. The Bone Spur Devil Apes were growing stronger and stronger. After 2 hours, the disciples had advanced 200 miles. Now the Bone Spur Devil Apes were so strong that people died with each passing moment. There were too many of them, and they were unafraid of death. No matter how many of them died, they continued charging. It was like the only thought in their heads was to kill. They had no sense of terror. They were natural slaughter weapons, merciless and brutal. The 6 factions continued to rush forward. But what startled people was the fact that Long Chen's faction had the lowest mortality rate. After 2 hours, only less than 800 of them had died. As for the other factions, at least 10,000 disciples had lost their lives in total. The Bone Spur Devil Apes are getting stronger and stronger, said Guyang darkly. Even after all this time, the Bone Spur Devil Apes didn't drop in number. Instead, their bodies were growing larger and stronger. Even the Dragon Blood warriors couldn't be careless any longer. Suddenly, countless huge figures covered the sky. Huge leopards with a pair of wings on their backs swooped down. They were incredibly fast, so fast that they seemed like phantoms. A rank 4 celestial sword was shattered with a single claw from these devil leopards. Along with his sword, half his body exploded as well. Everyone was taken by surprise. These devil leopards weren't just fast, They were incredibly powerful. Caught off guard, quite a few people were cut down in an instant, and panic struck the disciples. Several of them came toward Long Chen, quick as lightning. Long Chen smiled slightly and extended his hand. These leopards were called dark devil leopards. However, they were a bit different from normal magical beasts. These life forms were not from this world, but a devil world. The Martial Heaven continent had once gone through an unprecedented tribulation. There had been a battle of gods that had destroyed the world barrier and changed the terrain. The Martial Heaven searing had formed at that time. The destruction of the world barrier had allowed foreign life forms to invade the Martial Heaven continent. These bone spur devil apes and dark devil leopards came from a devil world. It was rumored that they were the original ancestors of magical beasts, the result of interbreeding with the wild beasts from this world. However, the odds of that being true were very low. The life forms that came from devil worlds were tyrannical, berserk, and only thought of slaughter. It was impossible for them to breed with the continent species. For example, these bone spur devil apes had no sense of fear despite having been cut down in droves. The only thing they had was a desire to kill. That wasn't something that should occur in life forms with intelligent minds. On the ground, the bone spur devil apes were growing stronger and still attacking, while in the sky, the huge dark devil leopards launched vicious attacks. Dozens of them came directly for Long Chen. Long Chen extended a hand, and dodging the claws of one of them, he grabbed the skin on the back of its neck and swung it around, using it as a weapon to knock back the other dark devil leopards. What startled him was that their claws were extremely sharp. The one caught in his hand was lacerated all over by them. Everyone be careful. These leopards' offensive power far outstrips their defensive power, warned Long Chen. They were incredibly fast with sharp attacks. Even if their defense was weak, their speed made up for it. Whenever they swooped down from the sky and fell into their midst, shrieks of pain would erupt. All the factions were panicked. Tang Waner flew into the air, wind blades erupting. She cut down hordes of the dark devil leopards, but there were too many of them and she couldn't kill them all. When Long Chen said that their defense was weaker than their offense, that was just in comparison. Their defensive power was by no means weaker than an ordinary 8th-rank magical beasts. The number of deaths in each faction rapidly rose. With each passing second, disciples were being killed. Now the difference between the disciples was made even more apparent. The Central Plains disciples didn't stay panicked for long. Fighting all out, although there were some losses, the death rate of the 4 regions' disciples far outstripped theirs. The 4 regions' disciples were being cut down one by one. They had never experienced such a terrifying fight, and their mental realms crumbled. Fan Song, Hu Geishan, Ke Xinyan, and Wang Zhen didn't bother with the people dying behind them. They continued charging forward. Only Hua Xiu extended the scope of her attack to protect the women behind her. But there were too many people, and she couldn't protect them all. Zhao Ziyan also unleashed her full power to protect them, showing the power of her water energy. But still, she wasn't able to protect all of them. People were constantly dying, filling her with pain. She felt profoundly helpless. She was a generation's genius, but in front of endless devil beasts, she could only watch as they killed these young women. Ziyan, just do your best. A person's power is limited. Don't feel bad, comforted Hua Xiu. She had clearly experienced much more than Zhao Ziyan and had endured the cruelness of reality. To protect everyone was impossible. They could only do their best. Fan Song and the others simply charged forward without care. This trial washed away the weak, leaving behind only the elite. What they wanted was the elite, not the trash. That was why they didn't bother with those people at the back. Their goal was merely to open the way forward, and those that lived would be the people worth raising. The dark devil leopards didn't slow them down at all. In fact, they advanced faster and faster. As for Long Chen's side, their speed began to slow down once the dark devil leopards appeared. Long Chen was entangled with several of the dark devil leopards, causing quite a few people to sneer. Once Long Chen's faction was thrown to the back, they would be alone and eventually exterminated by the sea of beasts. Long Chen was constantly swinging 2 dark devil leopards in his hands. Suddenly, he tossed them aside, and he let out a roar like spring thunder. With a single fist, astral winds blew apart dozens of dark devil leopards. This attack allowed the people following him to be filled with new confidence in him. Previously, he had been entangled with them and been unable to do anything, causing their hearts to sink. But now that he killed so many in one blow, their hearts lifted again. These devil leopards' attacks are strong and they are fast. Don't get in a tangle with them. What you have to do is kill them in one blow. They have 2 vital points, one is their heads and the other is their underbellies. Their skulls are extremely strange. Other than their lower jaws, they are completely sealed and treasure items have difficulty injuring them. So don't bother attacking their heads. Focus on attacking their underbellies. There is a row of scales on the bottom of their underbellies. Counting backward from the front, their 7th scale is their fatal weak point. That scale is just a decoration to trick people. It has no defensive power, and as long as your weapon stabs through it, you'll shatter a bead inside them that's similar to a Niden, and they'll die. Wanna give a demonstration? All right. Tang Wanner formed a hand seal, and small wind blades suddenly stabbed through the dark devil leopard's underbellies right where Long Chen had indicated it. What startled people was that as soon as these wind blades pierced their bodies, the dark devil leopards stiffened and died. It had to be known that even if they were cut in 2, their heads would still try to bite people, and their claws would continue to attack. But now they were instantly killed. It was inconceivable. The disciples following the Dragonblood Legion only realized now why Long Chen had slowed down and been entangled with those dark devil leopards. He had been searching for their weak points. With Long Chen's power, there was absolutely no need for him to do such a thing. He had done it entirely for them, causing their eyes to turn red. However, don't get too excited. With your power, aiming for that place against a rapidly moving target is almost impossible. That's why you'll need to learn how to cooperate and trust your companions. You'll need to learn how to entrust your lives to the people by your side. 3 people block the dark devil leopard's attack, and 1 person takes advantage of when it's blocked to launch a fatal blow. It'll be up to yourselves, shouted Long Chen. He had pointed out their weak point, but while it sounded simple, it was incredibly difficult. Furthermore, working together and entrusting their lives to others was not something anyone could do. Our lives were given to us by senior apprentice brother Long Chen. Why are we still hesitating? Brothers, charge. I leave my life in your hands. Suddenly, a large man with a hatchet roared furiously. He swung his huge hatchet at a dark devil leopard that was charging over. Boom! The dark devil leopard's claws slammed into the hatchet, causing sparks to fly. The large man was forced back dozens of meters, while the dark devil leopard was also knocked back. It was just about to use its wings to regain its balance. Just at that moment, a ray of sword chi pierced through one of the scales at its belly. The dark devil leopard stiffened and then collapsed limply. Ah, success, success. Brothers, cried the disciple who had launched this attack. The success of this attack raised their morale. People immediately went out to block the dark devil leopards, creating an opening for others to launch the fatal blows. They formed small groups to handle each dark devil leopard. As for the ordinary bone spur devil apes, their threat wasn't of much concern any longer. With this method, they gradually began to test and learn what cooperation was, what it meant to help each other. Only by handing their lives to the people beside them would they have any chance at surviving. They had never dreamed that one day, they would be able to place their lives in someone else's hands. They had also never imagined that someone would be willing to place their lives in their hands. After establishing this absolute trust, their cooperation grew more and more skillful. Even without Tang Wanner, they were able to advance steadily. Although there were still some accidents, compared to the previous slaughter, it was 1,000 times better. It's just like us in the 108th monastery. When we fought against the corrupt path for the first time, Boss taught us just like this, sighed one of the Dragonblood warriors emotionally. What a monster! Is he the reincarnation of a war god? In just a few hours, this weak group was transformed into a real army. That's ridiculous. Chaos raged in the Elder Hall. These old fellows who had lived for centuries and millennia were all deeply shaken by Long Chen's methods. His vision was sharp, and his methods were brilliant. He was able to probe the dark devil leopard's weaknesses, find a practical way to take advantage, and get these disciples to trust each other. He's definitely on the level of a war god. But it seems his temper and principles make him not suited for such an appellation, said the hall master. He had a special charisma that could make his subordinates loyal to death, vision to see the smallest details, and the flexibility to adapt according to the situation. These abilities to control the whole situation were definitely on the level of a war god. But then he would occasionally do unreliable, rash things. For a sea expansion disciple to cut off the head of a king, the disciple definitely must have lacked some brain cells. However, Long Chen hadn't hesitated to do so. Looking at that figure that seemed to have the entire situation under his control, they didn't know if he was a genius or a madman. Long Chen's actions startled everyone. Even after all this time fighting, the other disciples had been relying on brute force to charge through the ranks of the Dark Devil Leopards. But the Dark Devil Leopards were incredibly quick and powerful. Even rank 4 Celestials were in constant danger of falling. The disciples were all bunched together in their factions, competing in terms of luck to see who the Dark Devil Leopards would target. While the leopards were attacking their prey, the other disciples would attack them. But as for the unlucky ones to be targeted by the Dark Devil Leopards, only a few of them managed to survive. This was the method they were using to kill the Dark Devil Leopards. Now that Long Chen had explained their weaknesses and how to take advantage of them, they all followed his lead. And immediately, they felt like killing the Dark Devil Leopards became much easier. Furthermore, they also picked out some elite experts to handle the leopards. By using this method, it changed from a one-sided slaughter to an even battle. However, although they were powerful, they still didn't possess as much killing power as the disciples on Long Chen's side. In their case, after everyone had begun to cooperate, only a few casualties ever occurred again. As for the other factions, although this method reduced their casualties, their people were still constantly being killed. They were all heavenly geniuses, but unlike the disciples in Long Chen's faction, they were unable to entrust their lives to others. To simplify it, they only fought for themselves. They knew how to kill the Dark Devil Leopards. However, cooperating with others to do it was something else entirely. For them, their comrades were nothing more than strangers. Not bad. Continue like this and cut them down together. The weapons in your hands don't exist just to kill. They are also used to protect. When people don't hesitate to give their lives to you, you'll feel moved and blessed. However, you'll also feel the burden on your shoulders grow heavier. Yes, this is what I was talking about before, the reason for getting stronger. Experts need to know why they want to get stronger. Everyone keep up. I'm going to charge forward. How can we allow ourselves to fall behind others? Long Chen smiled. Huo Long suddenly roared. Its flame energy exploded in power, and a single swing of its tail killed all the devil beasts in front of it. Come charge. Let the world see that you are not weak. Long Chen roared and charged forward with Huo Long. He was a blazing streak of light that slaughtered all the Dark Devil Leopards and Bone Spur Devil Apes in front of them. One man and one dragon, both possessing an unstoppable air. Standing atop Huo Long's head, Long Chen appeared indescribably domineering. Boss is finally getting serious. Each time I see this, I can't help but get excited, cried Guoran. Brothers, charge with boss. Long Chen was like a blade that viciously stabbed into the sea of devil beasts. The Dragonblood warriors followed close behind him, still maintaining a widened formation to reduce the pressure on the disciples behind them as much as possible. It had been a long time since they had seen Long Chen emitting this undefeatable aura on the battlefield. Seeing him like a battle god in the air, they felt their own blood boiling. Even the disciples behind the Dragonblood warriors were affected. The other heavenly geniuses looked down on them. The world had abandoned them. They had thought they would die in this trial, but Long Chen had extended a helping hand. Now seeing how mighty Long Chen appeared atop the flame dragon's head, they all felt their blood heating up. Roaring, they charged their way forward. Long Chen's group had originally fallen a dozen miles behind. But now it was like they were blowing through rotting wood. Nothing could stop them. In less than an incense stick's worth of time, they had caught up with the other 5 factions and were advancing side by side. Seeing them standing on the same level as the 5 great factions, those disciples felt a burst of pride and let out cheers. Shut up. A group of trash without the slightest standards will never be worth anything. There's still a long way until the trial ends, so what are you getting so excited about? Shouted Wei Changhai from Hu Gishan's faction. They immediately felt embarrassed. This really was too early to be excited. Long Chen ignored him. But Guo Ran said, if you're a man, you should follow your heart's desire. Don't listen to an idiot's bullshit. He's just jealous, so he's trying to belittle and insult you. Your actions have caused certain people to feel uncomfortable inside. That's because your current battle power is even greater than those so-called elites that they picked. It's a slap in their faces, and a very vicious one at that. Your display has proven their blindness. What nonsense, why would I be jealous over trash? What a huge joke. Furthermore, how are they any stronger than the disciples we chose? Retorted Wei Changhai. Idiot, you still don't want to admit it? Isn't it obvious if you just look at the death ratio? How many people did you have before, and how many do you have now? Furthermore, are you blind? Do you not see how few people are even injured on our side? As for you, look, another one of your people died. Just as Guo Ran was speaking, another rank 4 celestial was mercilessly torn apart by a dark devil leopard. The disciples in Long Chen's faction were all shocked. Even rank 4 celestials were killed so easily, but they were still alive. It was all because of the protection of their companions. Although Long Chen had only been leading them for a short few hours, they had now comprehended things that others wouldn't be able to understand in a lifetime. In these short few hours, each one of them had gone through a heaven-toppling transformation. Now that they compared themselves to the other factions, their gratefulness toward Long Chen could no longer be described with words. In their hearts, Long Chen was like a god now, and they were unswervingly loyal to him. It's just luck. Let's see just how long you will last. Sneered Wei Changhai. He clearly had no way to retort. There had been just over 34,000 people at Long Chen's side at the beginning. Now there were still 33,000 people, and only over 1,000 people had died. It was practically a miracle. As for the other factions, their losses were shockingly high. Even the 10,000 Insect Guild, which only had 20,000 disciples at the beginning, had lost 5,000 people now. As for the ones who had lost the most, it was the Heaven Female Alliance. Despite Hua Shiyu and Zhao Ziyan doing their best to protect them, of their original 130,000 members, 30,000 had still died. This trial was too cruel. Zhao Ziyan had already wept several times, almost collapsing. Fortunately, Hua Shiyu was there to support her. At this time, the Dragon Blood Legion realized why Long Chen had refused to allow Zhao Ziyan to join twice. Her character was too kind and weak. The Dragon Blood Legion truly wasn't suited to her. If she couldn't even handle something like this, there was no way she could handle what would come in the future. For the other factions, their deaths were in the tens of thousands. When it came to true combat power, Long Chen's people were the weakest, but they had the least casualties. This was an indisputable fact. Did your father not teach you that luck is also a kind of power? If your father didn't teach you that, then I'll teach it to you instead, said Guo Ran. The Dragon Blood warriors were speechless. Guo Ran always liked to boast about stuff. But was being Wei Changhai's father very glorious? That Wei Changhai clearly didn't have any experience with this kind of thing. He hadn't understood what he had said, and he sneered, "You just have some dog's hit luck, and that kind of dog's hit luck isn't power, just coincidence." At this time, the silent Long Chen suddenly opened his mouth. "Correct, dog's hit luck won't come very often. But ever since I ran into you, it's different." "What are you talking about?" demanded Wei Changhai. "Idiot, my boss means that you're a lump of dog's hit, so every day he sees you he gets dog's hit luck," translated Guo Ran. "You too, are you looking to die? Aren't you right here? Why would I still need to look for more shit?" sneered Guo Ran. "You, Long Chen, control your subordinates," interjected Hu Geishan. I don't have subordinates. Each member of the Dragonblood Legion is my brother or sister. My brother's words represent my own thoughts, replied Long Chen coldly. Although Long Chen knew that powerful experts like Hu Guishan and Kei Xinyan shouldn't be offended, his experience told him that if he conceded to them, they would definitely push him even further, suppressing him to the point that he was crushed. So Long Chen didn't bother conceding at all. Long Chen, you're too arrogant. Before being so arrogant, you should check whether you have the qualifications or not. Hu Guishan's expression sank. As an unrivaled heavenly genius, he was able to detect that Long Chen wasn't ordinary. But he wasn't able to sense a feeling of mortal danger from him, so he didn't think Long Chen had the ability to challenge them. He had warned him several times, but Long Chen had remained unconcerned. That made him extremely irritated. Moreover, Wei Changhai and Han Yunshan were now his subordinates, and they would be capable helpers of his. He had to protect them. He looked favorably on their talent. Once their true combat power also increased to a high enough level, his divine beast mansion would definitely dominate this new generation of disciples. Long Chen's attitude irked him, and if it weren't for the fact that he didn't have the time to handle him, he would have taught a lesson to this brat who didn't know how high the heavens were. Now that Long Chen was leading his group to travel along with the other 5 factions, Hu Guishan considered it a kind of provocation. If the timing was right, he would have used him to show everyone his power. Arrogant? What a joke. This group of people was abandoned by all of you but has better results than you, so you insult them. Just who is being arrogant? You can act like gods looking down on ants, but you don't have the qualifications to sneer at others. If your ability at reincarnating wasn't better, you wouldn't necessarily be any stronger than them. Do you have to trample over others to prove your own existence? Well, I don't really care, but while trampling others, you should be prepared for the people you're trampling to turn the tables and trample you under their feet, said Long Chen indifferently. Hu Guishan's expression became extremely ugly, and killing intent appeared in his eyes. He was just about to speak when terrifying auras appeared from the front. What are these monsters? The end of the valley was finally in sight. They could vaguely see some castle walls with countless life forms climbing over them. Those life forms had upper bodies like humans, but lower bodies like lizards. They were 3 meters tall with scales covering their entire bodies. They had human faces, but their mouths were strangely large, the tips almost reaching their ears. They had sharp teeth, and their pupils were vertical like an alligator's. A long horn could be seen growing out of their foreheads. Everyone's pupils shrank upon seeing those lizard monsters. They sensed a fatal threat from each one of them. Within the broken-down castle in front of them, they also saw several huge light barriers. They were round, each covering 100-mile space. Just as they were bewildered by this sight, Sumo's voice rang out in the air, "This is the final step of the trial. These are the strongest monsters from the devil world that you'll face in the trial, bloodthirsty devil lizards. Each one of them is extremely powerful, comparable to a late 8th rank magical beast. Furthermore, they have no obvious weak points. There's no trick you can use, and the majority of you will die here." Hearing his emotionless words, everyone felt a chill. They could practically smell the bloodthirsty air coming from those lizard monsters. At this time, Sumo's voice rang out once more. However, this trial is not a path of absolute death. Within this abandoned castle, the Dao sect has set up several forbidden regions. Those forbidden regions are the balls of light you see. Each one of them contains an extremely powerful bloodthirsty devil lizard. They are the trials for the commanders. Each faction can choose their strongest expert to challenge the monster inside the light barrier, and if they can kill it within a set amount of time, they will become a core disciple. Furthermore, a few breaths after they kill the monster within, the light barrier will fade. Once it fades, all the disciples in their faction will count as passed and be transported to safety. Let me warn you, as soon as you enter the light barrier, the countdown will start. During this time, you cannot retreat from the light barrier or it will be viewed as giving up on the trial and will signify failure. That's all I have to say. The rest is up to you. The bloodthirsty devil lizards have arrived. A fearful shout rang out. People activated their treasure items to attack the lizard monsters charging at them. But they were horrified to find that the lizard monster's scales simply lit up, and their full-strength attacks were only able to knock them a few meters back. They weren't injured at all. Ah! A miserable scream rang out as a lizard monster charged its way into the hegemon hall, its claw knocking aside a disciple's weapon and its other claw grabbing him. In the blink of an eye, it ate half of the disciple's head, and his miserable scream had barely been released before it bit off the rest of his head. That lizard monster chewed, releasing the chilly sound of bones crunching. Looking at its bloody mouth and its sharp teeth, the disciples were terrified. Everyone listen. Tighten the battle formation. Dragon blood warriors, spread out to guard the outside. I'll leave the flame dragon here to help you. These bloodthirsty devil lizards are too strong, and there's no time to study them. I will kill the monster inside as fast as possible. Just hang on. Long Chen shot straight toward the castle. He could already tell that these lizard monsters had some kind of special defensive ability. Their scales seemed to be able to automatically release something similar to a defensive magical art. He had personally seen that when others had activated the true forms of their treasure items to attack, the scales on the lizards' bodies had flashed for an instant, and the space around them had twisted. Those people's attacks had rebounded. That was the most difficult thing. Their offense and defense were both so powerful, and their movements were nimble. There really weren't any particular weak points to them. The only way to kill them was through absolute power. Even the dragon blood warriors would be in danger facing them one-on-one. As for the others, they were pale. These opponents were not ones they could fight simply by putting their lives on the line. So Long Chen left behind Hua Long to help them while he rushed off. The others also shot over. Hua Shiyu, Fan Song, Hu Guishan, Kei Xinyan, and Wang Zhen all moved at practically the exact same time as Long Chen. They could all see that they were in a race against time. Long Chen was surprised to see that Kei Xinyan had also left behind his flame beast to protect his people. But very quickly his pupils shrank. Kei Xinyan had summoned another flame beast. This flame beast was a giant leopard, and its aura was even stronger than his other flame beast. Damn, he actually subdued 2 kinds of earth flames? No wonder he's such a poser, he really has the qualifications to do so. Although Long Chen looked down on Kei Xinyan as a person, he had no choice but to admit that he was powerful. In the eastern wasteland, he had never encountered anyone else in control of an earth flame. But here in the Central Plains, he immediately encountered someone with 2 earth flames, both of which were stronger than his earth flame. That made him sigh at the difference. Seeing Long Chen looking at his earth flame, Kei Xinyan sneered. A sinister glint appeared in his eyes. Long Chen's heart suddenly shook as he sensed some kind of danger. Kei Xinyan had definitely thought of some plot to use against him. Fuck, did he really think he was so easy to bully? He knew Kei Xinyan was hostile to him, but he didn't care. If Kei Xinyan dared try anything, he would put him in his place. The 6 of them rushed over to the center of the large but broken-down castle. It was unknown how long ago it had been destroyed. It was in ruins, and an aura of rot filled the air. When Long Chen saw that there were 6 light barriers, he sighed with relief. Even the elders watching sighed with relief. Long Chen's appearance had been extremely unexpected. There had originally only been 5 core disciple spots, but because of Long Chen's power, they had sent in an application to the Xiantian Tower to prepare another spot for Long Chen. But there had been no reply the entire time, causing them to worry. However, the hall master, Li Changfeng, and a few others didn't find this the slightest bit odd. 1 for each person. Good, then I'll be fast. Those children won't be able to last much longer. Long Chen saw that the others had all chosen their own targets. He chose one of the light barriers at the edges. As soon as he entered, he saw that the space inside was far greater than what it appeared on the outside. An ear-piercing roar suddenly came from the center of this space. He saw a bloodthirsty devil lizard that was similar to the others outside, but its body was 3 times bigger, and its scales were silver white. It hissed at him, revealing a viper-like tongue. There's no time. Long Chen's divine ring appeared behind him, rapidly circulating. Split the heavens. A blood-colored saber image filled the air. It slashed down right on the silver bloodthirsty devil lizard. Long Chen was surprised to see the lizard send out a punch with one of its claws. Boom! Long Chen was blown back, his hand feeling numb. It's this powerful? Long Chen was shocked. Just now, although he had merely used the first form of Split the Heavens, after all the nourishment he had given the divine runes in his acupuncture points, its power was several times greater than when he had previously used the second form of Split the Heavens. But such a powerful move still ended with him being blown back. As for the silver lizard, its claw wasn't damaged at all, and it once more charged at him. The silver lizard was large, but its movements were still extremely nimble. A claw came crashing toward him, and Long Chen hastily dodged. The sharp claws narrowly passed by his face. Lightning finger! At the same time as he dodged, Long Chen pointed out a finger. A bolt of lightning shot out at the lizard's eyes. Its reactions were fast, and it sent out a claw that broke apart the bolt of lightning. However, when it was struck, it clearly stiffened slightly. It works! Long Chen was pleasantly surprised to see this. He hadn't expected a little test to cause such a reaction. This armored monster was actually afraid of lightning. This was unexpected as lightning was most effective against creatures of the sea, and then furred magical beasts. But its effect sharply decreased against armored magical beasts. Some armored magical beasts were even immune to thunder force. But this little test exposed one of the silver lizard's weaknesses to Long Chen, delighting him. He was just about to take advantage of it when he sensed a strange stream of air behind him. He almost instinctively swung his saber behind. Boom! Long Chen shot off like a cannonball, tearing through the ground. Long Chen coughed up blood. He hadn't thought this silver lizard would be so crafty. At the same time as it had attacked him from the front, it had silently sent out its long tail to strike him from behind as well. If he had been struck directly, then even with his powerful physical body, he would probably have had all his bones broken. Anyone else would just explode instantly. Stabilizing himself, Long Chen wiped off some blood from the corner of his mouth. He was just about to check the other's situation when the silver lizard opened its mouth. A golden ray of light suddenly shot out. Long Chen's scalp turned numb. Without even thinking about it, he used the lightning body blink to dodge to the side. The ray of light shot right past him. It then pierced through the light barrier and struck the castle walls. A huge hole appeared in the wall. Not only that, it continued forward, killing any bloodthirsty devil lizards in its way. Through that hole in the wall, Long Chen saw many female faces. It was the Heaven-Female Alliance. Countless shocked expressions could be seen there. They had been lucky just now, as this ray of light had shot past them. But if it had been angled just a bit to the side, it would have gone right through them. That would have been a calamity they didn't want to even imagine. Not good. Seeing the silver lizard once more open its mouth, Long Chen's heart turned cold. The direction it was facing was the army outside. If it once more attacked, who knew if those disciples would be so lucky again? But the silver lizard didn't give him much time to think. Its next attack was being prepared and would come out quickly. He couldn't dodge it again. Lightning finger. Seeing it open its mouth, a sphere of light fully condensed inside, Long Chen quickly shot out a bolt of lightning that entered its mouth. That silver lizard hadn't expected Long Chen to take advantage of when it was unleashing its attack. Its attack had only just formed and it hadn't had time to release it when the lightning arrow struck it. Go ahead and explode. Boom. The ball of light exploded in the lizard's mouth. Its mouth shattered along with its lower head. Damn it, this monster's aura didn't drop at all. Long Chen had thought it was over now that its attack had exploded inside its head. But he suddenly realized that the heavily injured lizard's aura was as fierce as ever. That meant its vital point wasn't its head. It was very likely similar to a Niden magical beast. Unless its Niden was destroyed, its body wouldn't die. Long Chen suddenly launched an attack, slashing his saber at it. It was just an ordinary attack, because he had no time to charge up a magical art. He couldn't give it any breathing room. Long Chen's saber slashed toward its head. He wanted to completely destroy its head, but it instinctively blocked with its arms. If he could have destroyed its head with this move, then his victory would just be a matter of time. It would run out of energy eventually. But this silver lizard's power far exceeded Long Chen's expectations. If he hadn't been lucky and managed to use his thunder force to cause its attack to self-destruct, the consequences would have been too horrible to imagine. It was truly worthy of being the trial for core disciples. Although it had only revealed a portion of its power, it was enough to deeply shock Long Chen. It definitely had the power to push him to the brink, and maybe even into death. Having failed with this attack, Long Chen extended his left hand. A lightning sphere shot out. He couldn't give it any chance to recover. The lightning sphere exploded on the lizard's body. It let out a bizarre cry, and its body stiffened. Long Chen was already in the air, his saber raised. 27 of his acupuncture points had been activated, and a fierce aura soared into the sky. Only 18 of these acupuncture points had full-grown divine runes on them. He was able to unleash the second form of Split the Heavens perfectly, but the third form's divine runes were still in their initial states. They were still being nourished by his spiritual yuan. But despite that, they were strengthening with each passing day. The power of Split the Heavens also increased with them. Long Chen was accumulating his energy for the third form. He was confident that despite the silver lizard's power, once it was struck by this blow, it would at least be heavily injured. Then he could easily kill it. But just at this moment, his expression completely changed. He hastily looked at the distant battlefield. Panicked cries rang out along with loud cursing. A huge flame beast had charged the Dragonblood Legion and was attacking Huolong. "Kei Xinyan, you must want to die," roared Long Chen. That flame beast was Kei Xinyan's earth flame. For him to send it to attack Huolong, he was too despicable. Kei Xinyan had already suppressed his silver bloodthirsty devil lizard with his other earth flame. Looking at the furious Long Chen, he sneered. "Sorry, my flame beast suddenly stopped listening to orders. I'm trying to communicate with it right now, and I'm sure I'll regain control quickly." "Just wait," said Kei Xinyan. Right now, his other earth flame beast was unleashing powerful attacks on his silver lizard. He also had a long flame chain in his hand that had bound it. That silver lizard was unable to escape no matter how hard it struggled. Kei Xinyan had taken the absolute advantage. Thus, killing his silver lizard was just a matter of time. As for trying to communicate with his earth flame, that was absolute nonsense. The earth flame beast he was controlling was facing the silver lizard head-on, while he provided assistance. After a few testing blows, he had gained control of the rhythm and laid down a trap that had cleanly caught the silver lizard. He had originally thought that he would be the fastest one to suppress a silver lizard. The others still hadn't gained an absolute advantage like him. But when he had looked over at Long Chen, he had been shocked. The silver lizard Long Chen was fighting already had half its head destroyed. Kei Xinyan had looked over just in time to see Long Chen use a lightning sphere to paralyze his own silver lizard and prepare an attack to kill it. Kei Xinyan was startled and infuriated, unable to accept that the person he looked down upon would kill a silver lizard before him. This core disciple trial was their first step to rallying their supporters. While everyone was in danger, they would save them all, and the disciples who lived would follow them unswervingly. But the person who killed their silver lizard first would raise the greatest morale. That related to their future rankings, and Kei Xinyan couldn't allow Long Chen to get a head start on him. As a result, just as Long Chen had taken the absolute advantage, Kei Xinyan ordered his other flame beast that was still outside to attack Long Chen's flame dragon. Long Chen's faction immediately panicked. Huolong was their faction's greatest defensive shield. Now that it was attacked, their defensive line immediately collapsed, and the ordinary disciples were exposed to the bloodthirsty devil lizards. Most sinister of all, Kei Xinyan had his flame beast attack all out. It clamped down on Huolong's neck and refused to let go. It was actually devouring Huolong's energy. Huolong had already spent a great deal of its energy on protecting the ordinary disciples behind it, as those had been Long Chen's orders. As a result, this sudden sneak attack put it at an immense disadvantage. Despite doing its best, it was unable to reverse the tide. This sudden turn of events also caught Guoran and the others by surprise. They wanted to help Huolong, but now an unending tide of bloodthirsty devil lizards charged over. They had no choice but to go all out killing them, or the ordinary disciples would all be slaughtered. Even so, the ordinary disciples were falling one by one. With their defensive line in tatters, they were as weak as paper in front of these bloodthirsty devil lizards. Their blood dyed the ground, and seeing the people beside them falling, the ones still alive all turned scarlet-eyed. Those people were their brothers who they had entrusted their lives to. In the same manner, their lives had been entrusted to them. Seeing them dying one by one, they let out their bestial roars. Without a care for their lives, they charged at the bloodthirsty devil lizards, unleashing fatal attacks. "Don't worry, Long Chen, I'll quickly regain control." Very quickly, seeing Long Chen's eyes seeming to spit flames, Kei Xinyan reassured him. Long Chen glanced from the recovering silver lizard in front of him to the sneering Kei Xinyan. An icy emotion crept over his heart. In front of countless people's shocked gazes, Long Chen directly left his light barrier and rushed back to the Dragon Blood Legion. He gave up. The countless people whose attention had been drawn over were all stunned. He had no choice but to give up. Hua Long was being suppressed, and the flame beast was in the midst of devouring its power. Hua Long was growing weaker and weaker. Furthermore, those disciples were dying too quickly. Although it would have only taken him a few breaths to kill his silver lizard, those few breaths represented thousands of lives that would be forever gone from this world. Furthermore, even after killing it, he would need some time to send everyone to safety. The number of people that would die during that time was unacceptable to Long Chen. Boss, you? Guoran and the others didn't know what to feel upon seeing Long Chen give up his core disciple spot. "We can talk about other things later. First save them." Long Chen waved his hand, and dragon roaring filled the air. A huge lightning dragon flew out at the endless bloodthirsty devil lizards. Lei Long charged out, lighting up the sky. It pounced on the bloodthirsty devil lizards, and its powerful thunder force caused them to explode one by one. Long Chen was unaware that the devil world's creatures were all restrained by thunder force. That was especially true since his thunder force came from the 9 heavens tribulation lightning. It was the most supreme yang existence, and so its effect was even greater than the flame dragons. Lei Long's arrival immediately reversed the tides. Under Guoran's command, they tightened their battle formation and focused on defense. Lei Long had filled the void left by Hua Long. Now they were safe, but when they clearly saw how many of them were left, all their eyes turned red. From the moment Hua Long had been attacked, which caused their defensive line to be broken, until Long Chen returned, only a few breaths had passed. But during that time, half of them had died. Some of them couldn't help but let out bestial roars and weep tears as they looked at the corpses on the ground. Those people were their brothers. These fallen comrades had sacrificed their own lives to protect them. They had only just learned what it meant to entrust their lives to others, what it meant for them to protect each other. But in the blink of an eye, these people had thrown away their own lives to keep their promise. Seeing them lying there, never to move again, an unprecedented pain filled the survivors' hearts. They even wished the ones to die had been them. The Dragon Blood warriors profoundly understood this feeling, as they had been life and death brothers for a long time. They knew how this kind of relationship felt, so they understood that pain very well. Long Chen's eyes were icy as he charged at the distant flame beast. That flame beast had its mouth clamped over Hua Long's neck, and it was rapidly absorbing its energy. Without a word, Long Chen slashed down with his saber. His fury had reached a peak. The flame beast was struck in the neck, and the immense power blew it away, allowing Hua Long to escape. With a furious roar, it charged at the flame beast. Hua Long was infuriated. Because of the sneak attack, it had been stuck in a disadvantage and unable to reverse the tide nor release any of its power. Now it had to get revenge. "Get back. You're not its match right now." "Work with me," said Long Chen hastily. The flame beast had already absorbed too much of Hua Long's energy. The flame beast had originally just been a bit stronger, but now the difference was too great. The flame beast roared at Long Chen. That roar seemed to contain a trace of mocking. Long Chen knew that this flame beast was connected to Kei Xinyan's mind. Everything that had happened was at Kei Xinyan's will. Kei Xinyan had originally been thinking of devouring Long Chen's flame dragon while he fought for the core disciple spot. But he hadn't expected Long Chen would actually give up his core disciple spot and return to save these ordinary disciples. You think you can leave now? Keep dreaming. Seeing the flame beast turned around, Long Chen sneered and formed hand seals. Raging flame prison. Flame chains descended from the sky and stabbed into the ground. The flame beast was instantly bound within it. This was why Long Chen didn't let Hualong attack. It was to prevent the flame beast from escaping. Only when Hualong was cooperating with him could he capture the flame beast. Space constantly twisted. The flame beast crazily attacked the prison, but this prison was the combination of Long Chen and Hualong's power. Its own energy was unable to rattle it. The flame prison rapidly shrank. The flame beast was now being compressed into a ball and unable to move. Its struggling was of no avail. Die! The flame prison continued to shrink, and the flame beast had now gone from 5 miles long to 300 meters. And it was only continuing to shrink. Long Chen, you dare? A furious roar came from a distant light barrier. It was Kei Xinyan. Right now, he had completely suppressed his silver lizard and was about to kill it. But at the same time, Long Chen had bound his flame beast. At this time, he was unable to help his flame beast escape. Previously, he had forced Long Chen to make a difficult situation. Now Long Chen had placed him in a similar situation. If he wanted to save his flame beast, he would have to give up on killing the silver lizard before him. Just like Long Chen, he would have to give up his core disciple spot. But a core disciple spot was incredibly important. One reason was because of the rewards given out, while the other reason was that within the Xintian Dao sect, only a core disciple had the qualifications to form their own faction. Flame prison death blow. Long Chen seemed to not hear Kei Xinyan. His spiritual yuan erupted, and the flame prison condensed to its peak. The flame beast had completely deformed and was unable to even roar. Long Chen, if you dare to hurt my earth flame beast, I will definitely make you die without a grave, roared Kei Xinyan. Bang! The flame beast had been compressed to the peak, and it suddenly exploded into flame runes. Hualong flew out and devoured all those runes. They were the essence of the flame beast, equivalent to its flesh and blood. They were treasures to Hualong. Long Chen, just wait. I will definitely kill you. Seeing his own flame beast being killed, Kei Xinyan almost exploded. It had to be known that he only had 2 earth flames, and those 2 earth flames had cost his family countless resources just to obtain. Furthermore, raising them had exhausted endless manpower and effort. Having one of his flame beasts killed was like having his arm severed. It filled him with pain, and he almost went insane. Boom! Suddenly, heaven and earth shook. The light barrier where Hua Shiyu was exploded. It transformed into runes that flew toward the Heaven-Female Alliance. Big Sister Shiyu is the most amazing. She's the first to become a core disciple. Everyone hang on. Victory is in sight, shouted Zhao Zian. The Heaven-Female Alliance was heavily injured right now. They were down to 80,000 disciples from their original 130,000. But with these runes flying over, they had finally reached the end. The runes fell into their midst. When they landed on their bodies, they would instantly vanish. In just a few breaths, the 80,000 disciples of the Heaven-Female Alliance disappeared from the battlefield. Hugishan, Fansong, and Wangzhen's light barriers exploded at almost the same time. The light barriers turned into runes that flew amongst their factions. Those disciples let out a burst of cheering, but those cheers had only just appeared when they became miserable again. By relaxing, they had left an opening for the bloodthirsty devil lizards. Quite a few people died instantly. The flying runes needed a few breaths to send them away. In their excitement, they had actually made such a fatal mistake. Fortunately, they managed to endure the last few breaths. Once they were transported away, there were over 1,000 more corpses on the ground. Once those people were killed, another explosion erupted. Kei Xinyan had defeated his silver lizard. Just as his light barrier exploded, Kei Xinyan roared and charged at Long Chen. But the light barrier's runes landed on him and he vanished. His faction also vanished in just a few breaths. Now, the only ones left on the battlefield were the Dragon Blood Warriors and the surviving ordinary disciples. After devouring the other Earth Flame's essence, Hua Long had transformed once more. It had gone from faint blue to scarlet. When its runes circulated, powerful heat waves roasted the heavens. It had only just devoured the Earth Flame's essence and hadn't had time to digest it. It had no time for that, and it worked together with Lei Long to form a defensive perimeter that protected everyone. Even the sea of bloodthirsty devil lizards was unable to harm the people inside any longer. Sorry, Senior Apprentice Brother Long Chen. We caused you to lose your core disciple spot. The disciples came before Long Chen, ashamed. For them, he had ordered the Dragon Blood Warriors to be their shield, which was why so many of them survived. Later, he had established their trust in each other, and he had found the devil monster's fatal weaknesses to help them. He had shown them how to get stronger, and they were endlessly grateful. Even if they died, they would still be eternally grateful. But now, he had sacrificed the most precious core disciple spot in the Shintian Dao sect to help them. They had implicated him. Long Chen shook his head and didn't reply. He checked their numbers. The Dragon Blood Warriors were all fine, and so was Qian Duo. But now, the ordinary disciples had dropped from 30,000 to 13,000. That number made his eyes turn cold. This was not a mere number, but lives. Each one of them had been carrying their own aspirations. But now they would never be able to achieve those dreams. Long Chen's expression was frighteningly dark. No one dared to say anything. Guoran and the others who were familiar with him knew that he had reached the edge of exploding. After an incense stick's worth of time, runes fell from the sky. Long Chen felt his body lighten, and he vanished from the battlefield, appearing in a huge plaza. Long Chen, hand over your life. Long Chen and the others had only just appeared when a furious roar rang out. A large hand reached toward Long Chen's throat. All the disciples had been transported to the huge plaza. They were jubilant, but one person was extremely gloomy. It was none other than Kei Xinyan. They had all been transported to the plaza, but no one here came to greet them. They were practically given the cold shoulder. In truth, this was the Shintian Dao sect's rule. If a disciple failed the core disciple trial, they and their faction would have to endure for an incense stick's amount of time on their own. This was a very cruel punishment. The other factions would have already left, while the remaining ones would have to face a sea of devil monsters. Once Long Chen and the others arrived, they drew everyone's attention. Kei Xinyan immediately attacked. Long Chen, hand over your life. Kei Xinyan was filled with killing intent, and everyone here knew it. Long Chen had devoured his flame beast. Kei Xinyan attacked incredibly quickly. Long Chen had only just appeared and hadn't had a chance to look around. Meanwhile, Kei Xinyan's hand had almost reached his throat. Another large hand almost instinctively shot out in a profound arc, viciously slapping across Kei Xinyan's sinister face. Fuck your mother, you're the one who needs to hand over your life, roared Long Chen. Everyone only saw a blur before Kei Xinyan staggered back. His hand missed Long Chen's throat. After slapping him, Long Chen struck like lightning. Before Kei Xinyan could react, he grabbed his hair and slammed his head with his knee. In front of everyone's shocked gazes, Long Chen repeatedly slammed his knee into Kei Xinyan's face. The sound of bones breaking made people cringe. Idiot, a person who can fight my boss at close range has yet to be born, sneered Guoran. Long Chen's close-range combat skills had been accumulated bit by bit through true battles. The amount of experience he had in that was enough to write a textbook. No one would dare to fight him barehanded. For Kei Xinyan to want to subdue Long Chen in one move to humiliate him, it could only be said that he was asking for it. He tried to retaliate several times, but his efforts were all ineffective. Long Chen slammed his kneecap into Kei Xinyan's head as hard as he could. He wanted to kill this bastard. He didn't care what reason Kei Xinyan had to order his flame beast to attack Hualong. All he knew was that this bastard's action had caused over 10,000 innocent lives to be lost forever. He wasn't holding back at all. But he was surprised to see that Kei Xinyan's head didn't explode. Even a treasure item would have exploded by now. Bastard, fuck off. Kei Xinyan hadn't been able to get free with his hair caught. Now, with a furious roar, he suddenly escaped from Long Chen's grasp. 2 huge pieces of his scalp were now gone. Long Chen was carrying 2 pieces of skin with hair and blood on them. He actually severed his own skin. Startled cries rang out. Even Hua Shiyu, Fan Song and the others had solemn expressions. For martial cultivators, doing such a thing was one of the most ominous things possible. Furthermore, injuries could be quickly healed, but the hair had to grow back naturally. Now he would be in a humiliating state for a long time. Seeing his dense head suddenly become a barren island, all of them thought it was startling as well as funny. But no one dared to laugh. Both Long Chen and Kei Xinyan were erupting with killing intent. This was no ordinary battle, but a battle to the death. Die! Kei Xinyan roared furiously. Flame runes formed a pair of wings around him. A majestic aura soared, and terrifying waves of heat rolled out. Everyone hastily retreated as even the air was being ignited. A sensation of mortal danger forced them to run. Only Hua Shiyu, Hugishan, Fan Song, and Wang Zhen were able to stay standing in their original locations, coldly staring at the 2 of them. "Let's charge 2 to get revenge for our fallen brothers," roared the disciples who had survived with the Dragon Blood Legion. If it hadn't been for Kei Xinyan, their brothers wouldn't have died. A needle-like pain stabbed their hearts when they thought of those people who would forever rest in the trial. "Don't mess around. Do you think boss needs your help? Just watch." Guoran stopped them from charging forward. "But no buts. In this world, no one in the same realm can match boss," said Guoran confidently. From the moment he had met Long Chen, he had personally seen Long Chen defeat countless powerful opponents. He had trampled over the corpses of his enemies, fighting across realms easily. Even against unrivaled heavenly geniuses, Long Chen had maintained an undefeated record. Long Chen has a death wish. But it'll be up to Kei Xinyan's guts. "I doubt he'd dare to kill Long Chen," said Hu Greishan. Fan Song and Wang Zhen didn't say anything. They were all experts on the same level, and they were aware of each other's power. So they knew there was an uncrossable gap between Long Chen and them. A furious roar rang out as a huge flame leopard appeared in the plaza. Kei Xinyan had summoned his flame beast. He had only just summoned the flame beast when the tattoo on Long Chen's arm lit up. Without Long Chen having to do anything, Hua Long automatically flew out. It coiled in the air, glaring at the flame leopard. Earth flames were innate mortal enemies. As long as they saw another, they would want to devour them. It was instinct. The 2 earth flames caused quite a few people's expressions to drastically change. They sensed their hostility toward each other, as well as their immense power. Once they clashed, it would be a haven-shaking collision. "Kill!" Long Chen and Kei Xinyan both shouted at the same time and charged at each other. Kei Xinyan was wrapped in flames, and he held a huge flame blade. Boom! Long Chen's divine ring appeared, and boundless energy poured toward him. His killing intent filled the air as Blood Drinker slashed onto Kei Xinyan's flame blade. Terrifying chi waves completely exploded. At the same time as Long Chen and Kei Xinyan clashed, Hua Long and the flame leopard crashed into each other. Heaven and earth shook, and flame runes released a blinding light. The 2 flame beasts released heaven-shaking roars, and their power shook everyone present. They felt like they were suffocating in their presence. As for Long Chen and Kei Xinyan, they had also unleashed their killing moves, and had exchanged 7 blows without either side being able to suppress the other. What startled Long Chen was that Kei Xinyan's flame blade was something he had never encountered before. It was like a true weapon, and when it clashed with Blood Drinker, it actually let out a metallic ringing. Furthermore, it contained some kind of indescribable energy. It was like it was alive. Boom! Blood Drinker and the flame blade once more clashed. Both sides tried to knock the other back, but neither got their wish. They deadlocked in the air. "Long Chen, I'll make you pay a price for devouring my earth flame." Killing intent raged in Kei Xinyan's eyes. I'll make you pay a price for your idiocy. If I don't kill you, I won't be able to make it up to those fallen brothers. Long Chen glared coldly at Kei Xinyan, almost as if he was seeing a dead person. Hearing that, the disciples following Long Chen finally understood why the Dragonblood warriors followed and worshipped Long Chen so fervently. He used his conduct to prove that he was willing to use his life to protect the dignity of his brothers. They weren't even Dragonblood warriors and had only received Long Chen's care through their own luck. But now Long Chen had not only sacrificed his core disciple spot, but he was also making an enemy out of a heavenly genius with unlimited potential for them. Ha! Do you think you're the savior of the world? Who do you think you are? You want to act like some righteous hero? Within the trial, life and death are destined. The weak should be aware of their weaknesses. Without power, testing their luck is just courting death. Do you think the Xiantian Dao sect is a charity? By bringing in a group of trash, you're wasting the sect's resources. Their deaths will only benefit the Xiantian Dao sect. You dash pow. While Kei Xinyan energetically talked, he didn't expect Long Chen to suddenly tilt Blood Drinker. Caught off guard, their blades went to the side and Long Chen's hand viciously slapped across his face. I look down the most on people not in touch with reality. Is it so amazing to be born into a rich family? Does being born rich grant you the right to trample over others as you please? Does being born rich give you the power to treat other people's lives as blades of grass? Long Chen raised Blood Drinker into the sky. Blood Drinker began to unleash waves of saber images that forced back Kei Xinyan. Because of the previous face slap, Kei Xinyan was unable to recover in time and had no chance to strike back. He was forced back over and over. A light cracking sound came from within Kei Xinyan's body as if something had shattered. A strange energy began to surge. Stop! Just at this moment, a cold shout suddenly rang out. The person who had come was Li Changfeng. The strange fluctuation from Kei Xinyan's body was instantly covered up and disappeared without a trace as if it had never existed. However, it didn't escape Long Chen's spiritual perception. Although he didn't know what it was, he knew Kei Xinyan was still hiding his power. In truth, whether it was Kei Xinyan or Hua Shiyu and the others, they were all hiding their true strength. The power they had displayed so far was nothing more than the tip of the iceberg. They were true experts, and unless they were forced, none of them were willing to expose their trump cards. Once a trump card was exposed, it would no longer be a trump card, and then it would be dangerous. Although their previous displays had all been shocking and impressive, Long Chen trusted that they all had misgivings and were holding back. Elderly, Long Chen dash, said Kei Xinyan. We saw everything, and we know who's right and who's wrong. Return to your faction. The welcoming ceremony was about to start, so don't cause a fuss, warned Li Changfeng. Seeing that Li Changfeng didn't give him any chance to explain, anger flashed within Kei Xinyan's eyes. But he didn't dare to express it. Putting away his flame beast, he returned to his faction. Long Chen also put away Hua Long and returned to the Dragonblood Legion. Guoran and the others were just about to say something, but Long Chen shook his head. Now was not the time to talk. Everyone, keep your formations clean and tidy. I don't want any trouble, said Li Changfeng. As soon as he finished talking, the scene before them changed once more. They appeared in front of a huge tower. This tower was grand and majestic. It took up an area of 100 miles and soared high into the clouds. It was impossible to see the top. This was the Xiantian Dao sect's signature, the Xiantian Tower. It was said that it had existed from the day the Xiantian Dao sect was established. It was ancient and sacred. There was a crowd of people in front of the Xiantian Tower. Long Chen and the others were startled to see that these people numbered in the millions, and most of them were wearing the Xiantian Dao sect's disciple robes. Furthermore, those people were also curiously looking at them. They were young and were clearly also newcomers. In truth, what Long Chen and the others didn't know was that these disciples were from the same generation as them. What was different was that most of them were not combat-oriented disciples. Their trials were completely different. Other than these millions of disciples, There were thousands of elders in front of the Xiantian Tower. They solemnly stood there, neither speaking nor smiling. These thousands of elders were all kings, and they were the elites of the various departments in the sect. There were many elders that didn't even have the qualifications to participate in this ceremony. This was the terrifying foundation of the Xiantian Dao sect. Behind the thousands of elders was a platform with 36 seats. Each of those seats had someone in violet gold robes sitting on it. Those were the positions of the experts on the level of hall masters. Behind the 36 hall masters, there was one larger seat with no one sitting on it. With millions of disciples, thousands of kings, and 36 hall master-level experts all staring at them, even Long Chen felt a bit nervous. Some disciples could barely breathe from the pressure. This lineup was absolutely shocking. They had never dreamed they would see this many experts gathered together. Gulping sounds could be heard continuously. This huge space was so quiet that even the drop of a pin could be heard. The disciples could almost hear their own heartbeats. Suddenly, a ray of light shot down from the sky. A figure slowly descended onto the large seat. At first, that person had been half-transparent as if he was just an illusion. But by the time he sat on the seat, he appeared completely solid. He was a middle-aged man with a faint halo of light surrounding him. That was no ordinary light. Long Chen could sense some faint immortal spiritual qi. This kind of immortal spiritual qi was something the Eastern Wasteland Bell had once told Long Chen about. In the same way that spiritual qi could be cultivated to spiritual yuan, at the peak of spiritual yuan was immortal yuan. In order to form a strand of immortal yuan, it required one to condense immortal spiritual qi first. Once a person's immortal spiritual qi filled their whole body, they would transcend and become an immortal. Sensing the immortal spiritual qi around this person, Long Chen wondered if this was a person who had already touched the barrier to immortality. Becoming an immortal was a very distant legend. It had become nothing more than a myth, but this person made him think of those legends. When this person appeared, it was like the entire world changed. The air was full of an immortal charm, and strange fluctuations caused people's pores to slowly open and greedily absorb his faint aura. "Greetings, Shen Master." All the elders respectfully bowed, and all the disciples knelt on the ground. This wasn't a particular requirement, but this man possessed something that made them feel a profound sense of reverence. They felt like if they didn't bow, it would be as if they had blasphemed a god. Even Hua Shiyu, Hu Gishan, and the others all involuntarily knelt. They didn't feel anything unnatural about bowing toward this person. Instead, they felt like it was only natural. With all the disciples kneeling on the ground, one person instantly became very conspicuous. Only Long Chen was not kneeling. Long Chen could sense that this middle-aged man was incredibly powerful, and he felt reverence for him. But it hadn't reached the point where he would prostrate himself toward him. As a result, he instantly became a crane amongst a flock of chickens. Where did this brat come from? Kneel when you see the Shen Master. This order came from none other than the law enforcement hall master. Seeing everyone kneel except for this one person, he directly let out a stern order. Following his shout, everyone's attention was drawn to Long Chen. He was too eye-catching now. The Shen Master also cast his gaze toward him. Long Chen's heart suddenly shook. In that instant he almost lost consciousness, with all his secrets laid before him. "It's fine." The Shen Master smiled slightly, not revealing the slightest displeasure at Long Chen's lack of courtesy. No one noticed that when the Shen Master's gaze met Long Chen's gaze, the soft hair on the back of his neck instantly stood on end. Just how does the Elder Hall raise its disciples for them to not care about the rules at all? "Don't you think someone should come out and apologize for this rudeness to the Shen Master?" demanded the Law Enforcement Hall Master. Everyone was aware of the conflict between the Elder Hall and the Law Enforcement Hall. But for the Law Enforcement Hall Master to criticize them in front of the new disciples and the Shen Master during this welcoming ceremony was going too far. The Hall Masters all frowned. The Elder Hall and the Law Enforcement Hall were the two departments with the greatest responsibility in the Xiantian Dao sect. The Elder Hall was in charge of raising the disciples. It was the foundation for the growth and prosperity of the sect. As for the law enforcement hall, its duty was to purify the atmosphere of the sect, to keep it healthy and peaceful. For these two enormous powers to openly display their conflict in front of everyone, did they not care about the disciples' feelings? Wouldn't this cause all the disciples to question the sect's dignity? If the disciples felt no gratitude to the elder hall and no respect of the law enforcement hall, wouldn't the entire sect become a mess? What startled the disciples was that despite the Xian master being the person with the highest authority in the Xiantian Dao sect, he merely smiled amicably and didn't say a word. It's just an apology, isn't it? Then I apologize. Suddenly, Long Chen walked out, interrupting everyone's thoughts. Sorry, Xian master. It isn't that disciple was trying to be rude, but that disciple's skeleton is different. My kneecaps grew backwards, making it so I can't kneel. What nonsense! You need to be punished, shouted the law enforcement hall master. The elder hall's hall master didn't say a word. He just had a faint smile and watched as if this had nothing to do with him. You're the one who needs to be punished. Respected law enforcement hall master, do you think your current conduct is respectful to the great Xian master? The Xian master has already said that it's fine, meaning this matter has ended and the ceremony can continue. But you continue to bring it up in order to insult the elder hall's elders. In front of the Xian master and the disciples, you're intentionally causing trouble. Your conduct has already gravely harmed the law enforcement hall and the elder hall's images. If you want to be a man of the law, you have to first act like one. As the person with the highest authority in the law enforcement hall, you strike your colleagues and shake the Dao sect's foundation. Tell me, are you being respectful to the Xian master? The law enforcement hall master was unable to retort to Long Chen's sharp questioning. His expression became exceedingly ugly, but on the contrary, the elder hall master's expression was indifferent. He didn't seem pleased, nor did he try to mock him. Suddenly, a clapping sound rang in the air. The Xian master himself smiled and said, "Good, what a sharp rhetoric and moving speech. I haven't heard such an amazing argument in a long time." Xian master. The law enforcement hall master's expression changed, and he hastily bowed toward him. When you go back, seal yourself in seclusion for 3 days. If you can't even defeat a child in an argument, you need more work in that regard, said the Xian master lightly. Everyone's hearts shook. The Xian master was essentially imprisoning the law enforcement hall master, and he had announced it in front of everyone. He didn't give him any face. Yes, disciple knows his wrongs. I will reflect upon myself. The law enforcement hall master lowered his head, a hint of anger appearing in his eyes. The Xian master didn't look at him. Instead, he smiled at Long Chen. Little fellow, is there anything else? Long Chen hesitated, but he shook his head. He returned to his position, unable to comprehend this terrifying expert's thoughts. He'd need more information before saying anything more. Then let the welcoming ceremony begin. Only now did the Xian master rise from his seat, his gaze sweeping over everyone. A crisp slapping sound caused everyone to go deathly silent. The disciples were dumbfounded and the elders were shocked. They couldn't believe their eyes. No one had expected that Long Chen would attack someone in this kind of situation. The two of them hadn't been far, and as a result, Kei Xinyan was directly struck. Long Chen's divine face-slapping art had yet to miss. As for Kei Xinyan, he had never imagined that Long Chen would dare to attack him in front of the Xian master. With no defenses up, he almost fainted. This move's not bad. The Xian master had been watching with slight interest this entire time, but he finally had a reaction upon seeing Long Chen's face slap. He was clearly impressed with the move. Long Chen, you dare to strike me? It took a full 2 breaths before Kei Xinyan recovered from his shock. No, you misunderstand. I wasn't striking anyone, but acting according to what you said. You said that when someone offends their superior, they should be slapped. Well, look, I'm standing closer to the front than you, which is the superior position, while you interrupting me is an offense. You're the one who brought up that you should be slapped, so I helped you out. What? Do you have an opinion about it? Asked Long Chen. You. Kei Xinyan's teeth creaked from being clenched so hard. His whole body was trembling in fury, but he didn't know how to retort. How brazen, Long Chen! You dare to disturb the welcoming ceremony? The punishment is the thorned whip dash, shouted the law enforcement hall master. Can you let it rest already? This place is not the law enforcement hall, and you are unable to hide the truth from the masses. You are unable to punish me. Someone called my brothers trash, and I'm taking their place to speak. However, some people want to thwart me in 100 ways, so why can't I slap those obstructions? Do you think your word is law? And that whatever you say must happen? If you say we're criminals, we're criminals? If you say we have to be killed, we'll be killed? Do you think you're a god? If you are, then please prove it to me. If you aren't, then what right do you have to prevent us from defending ourselves? Demanded Long Chen. It was all too clear to him that this law enforcement hall master was a prejudicial egomaniac who was tyrannical and obstinate. He was clearly using him to embarrass the elder hall in front of the Xian master. Most likely, it was to win back the face lost by Lu Minghan previously. Long Chen had always thought that experts should have an expert's mannerisms and an expert's self-restraint. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to reach that height. Now he realized he was wrong, and very wrong at that. Now that he had arrived in the Central Plains, he finally learned the truth. Idiots always exist regardless of location, and idiocy was not dependent on age. This law enforcement hall master was clearly an expert even above a king, but he was so lacking in restraint and kept on using such low-level methods. Although he had kept his actions well hidden, Long Chen had seen such tricks countless times. Just looking at him sticking out his butt, it was clear he was crapping. Clearly, Kei Xinyan, Fan Song, and Hu Geishan all had some kind of relationship with the law enforcement hall. Otherwise, they wouldn't dare to directly target Long Chen in front of the Xian master. This would definitely leave behind a bad impression on the Xian master. So for them to still act like this, it was all too obvious. And it wasn't just Long Chen who found it obvious. There were plenty of sharp-eyed elders who seemed to have expected such a situation. The only thing they didn't understand was how the law enforcement hall had been so skillful as to draw in the new disciples. Quite a few people were waiting to see just how vicious the law enforcement hall's slap would be in the elder hall's face. Because of Long Chen's matter, Li Changfeng had suppressed Lu Minghan, and that had caused quite a bit of trouble. The elder hall and law enforcement hall had to have the situation mediated by the higher-ups, or a huge fight might have erupted. But that was just a stopgap. The law enforcement hall was not about to just swallow their anger over the matter. Originally, the disciples should have been looked after by the elder hall. But the law enforcement hall also had the authority to recruit disciples into joining the law enforcement hall. If it was just ordinary inner disciples, it would have been one thing. But now, Kei Xinyan, Fan Song, and Hu Geishan were all core disciples with their own factions. If they joined the law enforcement hall, it would truly be a resounding slap in the elder hall's face. To put it frankly, they would be enjoying the resources provided by the elder hall so that they could work for the law enforcement hall. As for the Xian master, he seemed to be unconcerned. As long as they didn't violate the sex rules, he would just watch. The harshest punishment he had let out so far was forcing the law enforcement hall master to go into seclusion for 3 days. Everyone had to feel reverence toward this Xian master's cultivation base. But he also seemed lazy to the bone, giving them a headache. This was an excellent example. The Xian Tiandao sect was famed even within the Central Plains, and even in ordinary sects, no one would dare to so openly provoke others in front of the sect leader. But the Xian master was just watching as if this was an interesting show. Fine, then let's hear your quibbling, said the law enforcement hall master coldly. Long Chen looked at Kei Xinyan, Fan Song, and Hu Geishan. You said that the inner sect trial was a survival of the fittest. Then let me ask, who is the fittest? Do you even need to ask something like that? Are you an idiot? Of course, the fittest people are those with the greatest talent and comprehension, sneered Kei Xinyan. Long Chen smiled and said, then according to what you said, why is there a need for a trial? Why not just directly pass or fail disciples based on their data? Numbers are just a reference. Without experiencing the true battle, how are they supposed to see a person's true potential? Replied Kei Xinyan. Aren't you just slapping yourself in the face? You just said that the fittest people are those with talent and comprehension skills. But now you say that without undergoing true battle, it's impossible to see who is fitter. They received the protection of the Dragonblood Legion, but the Dragonblood warriors were only able to give them some small opportunity to adjust themselves. Toward the end, they still needed to rely on themselves to survive. Their talent might not be high, but their unswerving determination supported them. For them to survive that cruel battlefield, do you know what price they have paid? Their talent was inferior, their cultivation base was lower, and their combat power was weaker. They had to put in 10 times the effort to win their current glory. Compared to you, they are the true warriors, but you call them trash? You're the biggest trash, sneered Long Chen. Long Chen's words caused countless people to look at those disciples behind the Dragonblood Legion. Even the strongest amongst them were only rank 3 Celestials, and there was even a small portion of rank 2 Celestials. For them to have survived such a cruel trial was truly worthy of praise. Thinking of how Kei Xinyan had repeatedly called them trash, quite a few people cast disdainful glances at him. Even some elders had to nod. Talent only gave people a better starting point for cultivation. But hard work was the most important factor. Kei Xinyan didn't know what to say. Looking at those distant disciples pointing at him and whispering, he had no way to retort. But no matter what, you've pulled in a group of unfit disciples into the inner sect, affecting the fairness of the trial, said the law enforcement hall master. Quite a few elders shook their heads inside. Had this hall master's head been jammed in a door when he was a child? How could he actually say such a thing? As expected, Long Chen said, "Fair? Are you joking with me? Was there ever anything fair in this world? Furthermore, what do you mean unfit? Just because they're less talented than others, they're unfit? If talent meant everything, what would be the point of cultivating? What would be the point of comprehension? Do you think if your talent was good, you could just sleep all day and still become a god? Each disciple is a seed, and before the seed germinates, you won't be able to tell what breed they are. You see some disciples who have bloomed already, so you feel they are talented and will have greater accomplishments. But are the disciples who haven't bloomed yet unfit? What idiot logic! Just because you don't bloom or bear fruit, why can't you be a sapling that grows into a heaven-reaching tree? Get back to your job and do it properly. When it comes to teaching and raising people, the Elder Hall are the professionals. Don't embarrass yourself here. What nonsense! Do you think I'm blind? You think they can grow into heaven-reaching trees? For them to only be rank 3 Celestials at the Sea Expansion Realm, the Foundation Forging Realm will be their limit. Not even 1 in 10,000 of them will condense a jade core. What sophistry to call such people heaven-reaching trees! Raged the law enforcement hall master. The jade core he mentioned was the actual realm of the king level. In the eastern wasteland, those who had reached the jade core realm were called kings, because in desolate places like the 4 outer regions, those who could reach the jade core realm were truly kings of the heavens. But in the central plains, it was just called the jade core realm. Normally, only rank 4 Celestials could condense a jade core. For others, the chances of them condensing a jade core was extremely low. For the law enforcement hall master to say that not 1 in 10,000 of these rank 3 Celestials would be able to break through to the jade core realm, he was merely stating a fact. You're the one spouting nonsense. Are your eyes blind, or did water get in your head? Otherwise, I don't understand why you would spout such nonsense in front of the Shen Master. There are countless marvels and miracles in this world. How can you claim that none of them will grow to such heights? Are you a god? Can your will subvert the will of the heavens? How can you be absolutely sure? Sneered Long Chen. Then what kind of proof do you have that they won't be a waste of the sect's resources? Retorted the law enforcement hall master. I'm the best proof, said Long Chen. What can you prove? Sneered the law enforcement hall master. When I was 15, I was just at the 3rd heaven stage of chi condensation. Is this proof enough? The only response to Long Chen's words was stunned silence. Everyone was completely focused on the Xian master. They saw him stand and walk to the front of the platform. First of all, congratulations to all of you for passing the inner sect trial. You will be raised as the Xian Tian Dao sect's elites and become the future pillars of the sect. Regretfully, many disciples died in the trial and have left this world. But you also know that this isn't because the Dao sect is being vicious, but because this world is just that cruel. Being kind to you now is being cruel to you in the future. When reality strikes you, it will mercilessly reap your lives. You've been living two peaceful lives, and after growing under the wings of your families, you still aren't aware of just how cruel this world is. This is a world where countless people are falling so that you can live your peaceful lives. They have used their own lives to win you your lives, said the Xian master. The Xian master's voice was low and magnetic, making it very comfortable for these disciples to listen to. His voice was full of sincerity and reached their core. None of them could doubt his words, and as a result, they were deeply shocked by them. Long Chen's heart shook. As expected, only by reaching higher heights could you see things that you couldn't see before. Long Chen had always felt that there was something wrong with this world. It wasn't as peaceful as he had thought, and the Xian master's words confirmed his suspicions. The Central Plains disciples weren't that shocked, but the disciples from the 4 regions all jumped in fright. The Xian master continued, "The creatures you encountered in the trial are devil monsters that come from the devil worlds. In places where the world's barriers are weak and in contact with devil worlds, there needs to be people guarding the channel. The Xian Tian Dao sect guards one of those channels. Each year, we have to invest a huge amount of manpower and resources. Of course, there are constantly experts that end up being sacrificed in the battles against the devil world. As for your trial, what you faced was nothing more than the most commonly seen, most inferior creatures invading from the devil world." The disciples were practically unable to believe their ears. Such terrifying creatures were nothing more than the weakest devil monsters? Then just how terrifying did the high-level devil monsters have to be? That's why you have to be full of reverence and gratitude to this world. Everything you have right now was not won by you, but by countless experts who sacrificed their lives. Each one of you has reached the sea expansion realm, and you've started to come into contact with some of this world's secrets. Just like how children who grow up into adults need to know their responsibilities and duties, as the inner sect disciples, you have a duty. Although the sect will go all out to raise you, there's no free lunch in this world. The resources you enjoy were only obtained through the countless lives of heroes. So at the same time as you enjoy the privilege of using those resources, you have a responsibility. When the Dao sect needs you, you need to stand up and face your fierce opponents. Long Chen now finally understood why the Eastern Wastelands branch sect didn't engage in any business and merely relied on the Central Plains head sect. In the beginning, he hadn't understood why the sect would simply continuously take a loss by throwing resources at disciples for free. Even if the sect was built over a mountain of gold, it would eventually be used up like that. But now, Long Chen understood that it was an investment for now. If there are people who feel like the pressure is too great, or that it is too dangerous, you can give up your status as inner sect disciples and become outer sect disciples. The sect will definitely not mistreat you, and will still give you your due as outer sect disciples. If you choose to stay as inner sect disciples, then you have to understand your duty. You've all grown up now, and need to take up your responsibilities. So before the ceremony, make your decision. If anyone has any objections, you can raise them right now. After the ceremony, there won't be any time for objections, and violators will be harshly punished according to the sect's rules, said the Xian master. The disciples didn't know what to say. The Xian master's meaning was clear. Being an inner sect disciple had its own conditions. Once you entered, it was like signing a contract. You couldn't selfishly leave the Xian Tian Dao sect, or you would be viewed as a traitor of the sect. But now that everyone had just survived that deadly inner sect trial, they were unwilling to just give up the status they had won. Long Chen was indifferent. Having eaten the food of the Xian Tian Dao sect, did these people want to just pat their butts and leave without working for it? There was no such thing in this world. The Xian Tian Dao sect's rules were very fair. Better treatment required greater danger. and greater danger naturally resulted in higher rewards. Furthermore, the Shen master had stated it very clearly and openly. Oh! Long Chen suddenly saw a strange thing. The law enforcement hall master had cast a special look at a certain person. Just at this moment, Kei Xinyan took a step forward. Shen master, disciple has one thing he doesn't understand. The inner sect trial is a survival of the fittest, a trial so that the Dao sect can choose the best people to spend its resources on. But there's someone who broke the rules and pulled a group of trash in as well. Having them associated with elites like us is an insult and a blasphemy to the Dao sect. Kei Xinyan's words immediately caused the disciples behind the Dragonblood Legion to become furious. Calling them trash was the greatest insult. Correct, it really is going too far. It has affected the impartiality of the trial. Some people, in order to seem like a hero, ignored the Dao sect's rules and need to be punished. Unexpectedly, Hu Guishan also walked forward. They should be stripped of their right to be inner sect disciples, or it would be an insult to the other inner sect disciples. Fan Song also walked forward. Of the 5 great heavenly geniuses, other than Hua Xiyu and Wang Zhen, the others had all walked forward to criticize Long Chen. Correct, Long Chen intentionally disturbed the impartiality of the Dao sect and should be heavily punished. Such a person shouldn't even be an inner sect disciple and should be expelled from the Dao sect. Cried Han Yunshan, Wei Changhai, and Yen Mochen. Following them, the 3 factions experts all began to shout, demanding that Long Chen be punished. The millions of disciples looked oddly at these passionately shouting disciples, not knowing what was happening. The law enforcement hall master smiled faintly. He looked toward the elder hall master, but he was disappointed to see that his expression was still indifferent. As for the person with the highest authority in the Xiantian Dao sect, the Shen master, he didn't say a word. He just watched with interest, a slight smile on his lips. It was like he was just a spectator watching a show. Shen master, we are willing to give up our spots as inner sect disciples. But please don't make things hard on senior apprentice brother Long Chen, shouted one of the disciples behind the Dragonblood Legion. Yes, I also don't want my inner sect disciple position. All I ask is that the sect does not punish senior apprentice brother Long Chen. Following one person's lead, the others also began to shout. Over 13,000 disciples chose to give up their inner sect disciple positions. This action caused all the elders to be moved. In order to not implicate Long Chen, these people had all take the initiative to give up their spots. Don't you dare, raged Long Chen. Do you realize your current actions are a betrayal? Senior apprentice brother Long Chen? They were startled. If you give up your spots, what about your efforts? What about those brothers who died in the battle in order to protect you? Your lives are no longer your own, and you have to accomplish the dreams they weren't able to accomplish. You are a continuation of their lives and wills. Is this kind of little setback enough for you to give up on everything? Do you think your brothers' lives were sacrificed for this? Is this worthy of their sacrifice? But what is there to argue about? It's just a bunch of hopping clowns. If you can be unafraid of death, why be afraid of a few idiots? Don't make me look down on you, said Long Chen. All right, we'll do as you say. Even if you want us to fight to the death against them, we won't hesitate, shouted the disciples. Some of them were already holding their weapons. How brazen! Are you trying to rebel? Shouted the law enforcement hall master. Long Chen waved his hand, and only then did they quiet down. As for the law enforcement hall master's shout, they had treated it like a fart, ignoring it completely. Long Chen looked from the cold and sanctimonious law enforcement hall master to the Shen master who was watching with interest. He was unable to comprehend what this middle-aged man was doing. Was he really the leader of this sect? He had no arrogance or awe-inspiring aura to him. He didn't even seem to care the slightest about the law enforcement hall master's shouting. Long Chen didn't understand what the Shen master was thinking. He had no choice but to stand out, but he was comforted to see the elder hall master almost imperceptibly nod toward him. If Long Chen still didn't understand, then he wouldn't be Long Chen. The elder hall master's meaning was clear: go against them as brazenly as you want. The Elder Hall will be your solid support. As the leader of the law enforcement hall, you label people criminals and rebels so easily? Is this the style of the law enforcement hall? Is everyone you talk to a criminal? Said Long Chen. All the elder's expressions became odd. That was because his words were entirely correct. When the law enforcement hall's elders spoke to others, they spoke as if they were interrogating them, irritating them. Long Chen, you're too brazen. You dare to contradict the master of the law enforcement hall? Now that you've offended your superior, you need a slap, shouted Kei Xinyan. Pow! Kei Xinyan had only just spoken when a large hand immediately helped him out and viciously struck his face. Everyone was filled with disbelief. That made Long Chen realize something. The Elder Hall had definitely hidden everything about him. He had thought that some information about him would already be circulating amongst a portion of these people, but now it seemed the Elder Hall Master was also someone with profound scheming. He intentionally didn't release information about Long Chen to give him more opportunities to slap people's faces. Long Chen looked at him, and he saw the Elder Hall Master looking back at him, a slight smile on his face. As expected, he was an old fox. Perhaps all his reactions were within his expectations. Old Ginger truly was hotter than young Ginger. Compared to how crafty the Elder Hall Master was, the law enforcement hall master's little tricks should be nothing. According to reason, the Elder Hall should be toying with the law enforcement hall. But how was it that the law enforcement hall was still so overbearing? Long Chen couldn't help being shocked. He felt like he was still too inexperienced. The Elder Hall was already using him. Although he had known that beheading Lu Minghan would make him enemies with the law enforcement hall, he had never regretted it. Back then, Lu Minghan had gone too far. However, he didn't like this kind of obscure feeling of being used. He didn't mind being a weapon for the Elder Hall, but he hoped they would be tougher rather than being so veiled. This made him feel uncertain. Long Chen is telling the truth. The Elder Hall has investigated his past and we're sure that what he is saying is the truth. The Elder Hall Master seemed to see through Long Chen's thoughts and opened his mouth for the first time. Long Chen was a bit surprised, but he quickly realized that the Elder Hall Master was expressing his position for him so that he could be at ease. Originally, his greatest worry was that he would be tossed aside once he was finished being used. That would infuriate him. From the Phoenix Cry Empire, the 108th Monastery, the 36th Super Monastery, and then the Eastern Wastelands branch sect, he had already seen through these kinds of unspoken rules. He was aware that before he stabilized his own footing, the most important thing was to find a reliable backer. The Elder Hall was his best option now. He needed the Elder Hall, and the Elder Hall needed him. Working together would only bring benefits to both of them. The law enforcement hall master's expression became ugly once the Elder Hall Master spoke. He knew he had fallen for a trap. Just now, he had said that these rank 3 Celestials wouldn't be able to reach the King Realm in their lifetimes. But his words had been too overconfident. Long Chen had only been at Qi condensation when he was 15 years old. According to the theory he had just stated, such a person shouldn't even be called a cultivator. They were just a cripple. But now, Long Chen had reached the Central Plains and was contending against the heavenly geniuses. His words were now a slap in the face, and a very resounding one at that. There are always some people who run into a lucky chance. But can you say that every person will have your kind of luck as well? Retorted the law enforcement hall master. When we first followed Boss, we weren't even Celestials, said Guaran. He's right. None of the Dragonblood Legion's people were innate Celestials. We've investigated it, and we can confirm it, said the Elder Hall Master. Now the Law Enforcement Hall Master was even more infuriated, as he was slapped in the face once more. There was no way to retort, and all his paths had been blocked by Long Chen. Long Chen was using himself to tell everyone that sometimes, hard work was even more important than talent. There were no absolutes in this world, and people shouldn't be looked down upon just because they were less talented. Luo Fan, do you have anything else to add? Finally, the Shen Master opened his mouth. Reporting to Shen Master, disciple simply feels dash. The Shen Master waved his hand to cut him off. Don't answer beside the point. If you have nothing else to add, Begin the badge awarding ceremony. Yes. The law enforcement hall master had no choice but to helplessly retreat. The Shen master's meaning was clear: he had no ground to stand on, so don't say any more. In other words, he had to accept that these people would be inner sect disciples. Although he was unwilling, he was unable to find any reason to go against this. All disciples who passed the inner sect trial, step forward. Take your inner sect robes and badges. Starting today, you are the glorious inner sect disciples. Li Changfeng walked forward and announced. Cheering erupted, the loudest cheering coming from the people following Long Chen. They had succeeded. The elder hall's elders distributed the disciple robes as well as individual status badges. With these badges, they could withdraw a certain amount of resources each month and enter the cultivation grounds. Once everything was distributed, Li Changfeng continued, now we will distribute the core disciple badges. Kei Xinyan sneered while looking toward Long Chen. Only Hua Xiu looked toward him with some sympathy. She felt some pity for him as he had the power to be a core disciple. The disciples behind Long Chen became dim. They were the ones who had held him back. Hua Xiu, Hu Geishan, Fan Song, Wang Jin, Kei Xinyan, and Long Chen, come forth and receive your new robes and badges. Li Changfeng paused for a moment before saying Long Chen's name. Long Chen couldn't believe his ears. What? Didn't he fail? Han Yunshan was the first to cry out. What's going on? He clearly failed, so why does he get a core disciple spot? Lu Tsang, what do you think you're doing? Roared the law enforcement hall master. The Lu Tsang he spoke of was the elder hall master. I'm not doing anything. Long Chen has met the criteria to be a core disciple, said Lu Tsang lightly. The law enforcement hall master, Luo Fan, was infuriated. He bowed toward the Shen master and said, Shen master, Lu Tsang's conduct is an abuse of his position. Lu Tsang, give me your reason, said the Shen master. Lu Tsang also bowed and said, reporting to Shen master, the trial is just a kind of formality. We can't lose a genius because we are stuck adhering to the convention. The main goal of the trial is not to test the core disciples' power or potential, but their leadership capabilities. The reason the Dao sect spends so much to raise its core disciples is because it wishes to raise a genius commander to lead the junior generation. Long Chen led the weakest faction with the lowest talent, but all the way to the end, his faction's mortality rate was the lowest. He has a sharp vision, powerful charisma, and great wisdom. Furthermore, even while he was in the core disciple trial, when his faction met with danger, he didn't hesitate to give up the enticement of a core disciple spot to help his faction. This all embodies the elements of a commander. What nonsense! Commanders should view accomplishing their missions as their goals. If they failed their mission because of soft-heartedness, what kind of commander would they be? That would just be a trash commander. Sneered Luo Fan. Lu Tsang looked at Luo Fan and shook his head. If you use any means necessary to accomplish the mission, then it can't count as success in the end. A commander who fails the mission because he protected his people is trash, but a commander who sacrifices his companions' lives to accomplish the mission is worse than trash. Long Chen hadn't expected that the refined and wily elder hall master would be able to say such bold words. He couldn't help but feel some praise. His last words were said with emotion, or else there was no way it would strike people so deeply in the heart. He was definitely speaking his true feelings. You're just forcibly twisting logic, raged Luo Fan. Logic is constant and cannot be twisted. It is the right of the Elder Hall to award Long Chen with a core disciple spot. If the law enforcement hall is dissatisfied, you can file a complaint, but you have no right to interfere. Hallmaster, you go beyond your authority. Lu Tsang shook his head. His words didn't contain any anger, but they were so persuasive that it totally convinced people. One was refined and graceful, while the other was flustered. When placed side by side, the difference was stark. Long Chen shook his head. This law enforcement hall master was an idiot. Just how had he cultivated to reach his current level? Were the heavens that blind? If Long Chen were the Shen master, he'd have long since slapped this idiot to death. He couldn't understand what this impenetrable Shen master was thinking. Long Chen has met the requirements for a core disciple. "There's no need to fight over this matter," said the Xian master in a tone which said his words were final. The law enforcement hall master's expression immediately became exceedingly ugly, but he didn't dare to say anything. He knew that while the Xian master didn't normally interfere, no one could change the decisions he made. If he dared to retort, he would definitely have to endure his thunderous fury. Hua Shiyu, Hu Guishan, Fan Song, Wang Jin, Kei Xinyan, and Long Chen walked up to the platform and received a beautiful case. Inside were their core disciple badges and robes. Long Chen, "Just wait. I won't let you off," whispered Kei Xinyan as he glanced sideways at Long Chen. Long Chen looked at him and coldly said, "Idiot, did you think I would let you off?" But the two of them were only able to exchange a few words before they had to return to their factions. The welcoming ceremony starts now. Activate the Xiantian blessing. The Xiantian tower suddenly lit up, countless runes revolving around it. Immortal spiritual qi began to descend upon the disciples. Everyone immediately felt their bodies lighten and all their pores open, greedily absorbing that hallowed aura. My spirit root is upgrading, and my spirit blood is being purified. Heavens, what kind of energy is this? The disciples went wild with excitement. Baptized under that aura, they felt their bodies undergoing some kind of metamorphosis. The men grew more handsome, and the women grew even more beautiful. This is the blessing of the Xiantian Tower, and it will be extremely beneficial to your future cultivation. You'll understand in the future. That's all, the welcoming ceremony is over, announced Li Changfeng. Suddenly, a blood-red saber appeared and lightly cut across a hand. Fresh blood flowed onto a badge. Seeing Long Chen's actions, everyone's expressions changed. The disciples had just begun to scatter when they saw Long Chen take out Blood Drinker and open a cut on his hand. His blood dripped onto his badge. The elders' expressions all changed. They immediately realized Long Chen was about to do something extremely crazy. The sound of a bell reverberated throughout the air, freezing all the exiting elders in their tracks. Only the Xian master's figure was already gone, and nobody knew when he had left. Kei Xinyan, I, Long Chen, use my status as a core disciple to issue you a life and death battle. Using my blood to ring the bell, I ask everyone to bear witness. Long Chen's saber was propped on the ground, his blood completely covering his badge. He had activated the battle pact mechanism inside the badge. Before the trial, the disciples had all been introduced to the Xiantian Dao Sect's rules. Within those countless rules, there was one that said if disciples had irreconcilable enmities, they could initiate challenges to each other. However, there would be no suppressing of the weak. Challenges had to be between people on the same level. Inner sect disciples could only challenge inner sect disciples. They couldn't challenge outer sect disciples. The first thing Long Chen did after obtaining his core disciple badge was to issue a challenge, and it was no ordinary challenge. By using his blood to ring the bell, he had issued a life and death challenge. Only core disciples were qualified to issue life and death challenges. This kind of challenge represented that their enmity had reached the point of either you die or I die. Core disciples were all important pillars of the Xiantian Dao sect, and so the bell had to be tolled for a life and death challenge between them. It signified that the entire sect's attention had to be focused at such a time. Long Chen, don't be foolish dash. Li Changfeng's expression changed. Haha. Good, you have guts, Long Chen. I accept. However, before Li Changfeng could finish speaking, Kei Xinyan had already bit his thumb and allowed his blood to drip onto his badge. The sound of a bell once more rang out, but this time, two pillars of light descended from the sky, enveloping the two of them. In that instant, their bodies became illusory and isolated by the light pillars. This was all in accordance with the triggering of a life and death challenge. Once it was confirmed and approved, the two of them would be transported to the life and death stage. All the disciples present were stunned. This turn of events had happened too suddenly. Before they could understand what was happening, the two of them were enveloped by those light pillars. But the Dragon Blood warriors understood Long Chen, and they knew he wasn't capable of accepting things as they were. He had to get revenge for those disciples. Senior apprentice brother Long Chun. The other disciples who had followed him also understood. But they had never expected Long Chen to care so much. That matter was already over, and Long Chen had already done more than his share for them. Even if things were left like this, they would be eternally grateful to him. The matter was already over, and those people were already dead, but Long Chen was unable to put down the killing intent in his heart. He had to get revenge for those people, or he wouldn't be able to rest. Even Hua Shiyu, Wang Zhen, and the others were startled. Long Chen was definitely a madman. Madmen were too frightening. He refused to wait even a single night for revenge. Hu Guishan and Fan Song sneered. In their eyes, Long Chen was simply looking to be killed. He had no idea just how powerful they were. There was an uncrossable divide between them. Han Yunshan, Wei Changhai, and Yen Machen were all delighted as they had enmity with him. Han Yunshan had even been tormented by Long Chen and wished to cut him into 1,000 pieces. Hall Master Lu Tsang, 2 core disciples have initiated a life and death challenge. What are you still hesitating for? Sneered Luo Fan sinisterly. He hadn't expected there to be such a turnaround. This fortune had come too suddenly. With Long Chen taking the initiative to kill himself, he was already impatient. The two of them had already finished the formalities. All they needed was Lu Tsang's approval and the life and death martial stage would be opened. Now seeing Lu Tsang standing there silently, Luo Fan couldn't help but urge him. He longed to see the sight of Long Chen being killed. Lu Tsang suddenly smiled. In the beginning, he had also been shocked by Long Chen's actions. He wasn't able to understand what Long Chen was thinking, and just as he had been wondering if he should permit them to fight or not, a voice rang out in his head, allowing him to relax. He took out a foot-long chessboard. Thousands of runes were revolving over that chessboard, making it a dazzling sight. This was a tool to control the Xiantian Dao sect's thousands of trial and cultivation regions. Seeing that, a trace of envy appeared in Luo Fan's eyes. The reason the Elder Hall possessed so much authority was because they controlled so many resources. As for the Law Enforcement Hall, they only had the authority to enforce the laws of the sect. Although they were an important department, their prestige was not as high as the Elder Halls. It is not permitted to initiate life and death challenges for the first 3 months after joining the sect. But since you have so much anger, I will permit you to fight. However, you may not kill your opponent. If you agree, the battle can advance. If you don't, then the challenge will be revoked. If you still fight in private, you will receive a heavy punishment, declared Lu Tsang. In reality, these were not Lu Tsang's words, but the words of someone above him. He was just following their instructions. Disciple accepts, shouted Kei Xinyan. Disciple also accepts, said Long Chen. The two of you better take note. Don't try to harbor any evil thoughts and accidentally kill your opponent. If you do, you will be expelled from the Xiantian Dao sect, warned Lu Tsang. Don't worry, I won't kill him. Killing him would be letting him off too easily, said Kei Xinyan, a sinister expression on his face. Long Chen didn't say anything. Wasn't it just being expelled? Then it was fine. Seeing that two of them had no objections, Lu Tsang activated the chessboard. The scene before everyone changed as they appeared in front of a huge martial stage, with Long Chen and Kei Xinyan standing in the middle of it. Within an underground palace at the core of the Xiantian Dao sect, the Xian master was sitting on a prayer mat, an ancient chessboard in front of him. The chessboard was covered in pieces, and the white and black pieces were in a deadlock. The Xian master looked at the chessboard, a white piece in his hand. Even after a long time, he was unable to place it. In the end, he placed the piece in his hand in an unremarkable corner. An aged voice rang out. A meaningless move. The voice had come from in front of the Xian master. It was like someone was sitting in front of him on the other side of the chessboard. But it was impossible to see anyone. I don't believe so. Whether it has meaning or not, what should be done should be done. Without taking a few steps, how will I clearly see the whole situation? Said the Xian master lazily. Are you saying you don't believe me? Said that ancient voice, a bit of dissatisfaction in its voice. This little one doesn't dare. For that little fellow, you pulled me out of seclusion. You know, I had just begun to grasp a bit, said the Xian master helplessly. If it wasn't something so important, why would I pull you out? The reincarnation mirror has already issued a warning that the person who caused it to crack back then has arrived. I already warned Lute Song and them not to make things easy or hard for Longchen. But that little fellow has a terrifying origin. The reincarnation mirror only saw the tip of the iceberg before it also broke apart. He's most likely a divergent. Now that he has come to the Shen Dao sect, it could be an immensely good thing, or it could cause the entire sect to be destroyed. So I need you to be serious, warned that ancient voice. If you're going to watch me so closely, why not just do it yourself? The Shen master bitterly smiled. What nonsense, I'm also at a critical juncture and need to go into seclusion. How do I have time to watch over him? Snorted the voice. Then since you've left this matter to me, just let me handle it. Don't stare at me like a hawk. I have my own style of handling things, and there's no need for you to worry, said the Shen master. Fine, I'll leave it to you. That ancient voice stopped speaking, leaving behind only the Shen master staring at the chessboard. It was unknown how many years this game had been going on. Things were in a complete deadlock, and no matter what move he made, it wouldn't change things. Once a deadlock is broken, I'll have to spend some time thinking of the next arrangement. Victory or defeat is unpredictable, sighed the Shen master after a long time. Atop the martial stage, Long Chen and Kei Xinyan glared at each other, their killing intent for the other not at all concealed. The air was taut. Can senior apprentice brother Long Chen win? Asked one disciple worriedly. Starting today, you'll have to remember not to call him senior apprentice brother Long Chen. Call him boss because boss already treats you as brothers. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen doesn't sound mighty or domineering enough. Secondly, you'll have to remember that boss is an undefeatable battle god. At the very least in the same realm he won't lose to anyone, said Guoran. Guoran understood Long Chen the best. He knew that at the beginning, Long Chen had merely felt some pity for these disciples. He hadn't been thinking too much about it, and he had just been planning on helping them out a bit. But as they cooperated and formed bonds of trust, choosing to give their lives to their companions during the crisis, his feelings had changed. He had thought of the beginning of the Dragonblood Legion. People's emotions were strange things. It was unknown when his feelings had changed exactly, but Guoran knew that Long Chen was already planning on leading these hot-blooded men. Many thanks, Boss Guoran. I understand, said the disciple gratefully. What the fuck, there's only one boss. You can't call me that, or I'll be beaten. If you want to praise me, you can call me handsome god, said Guoran. Stop talking. Boss is about to attack. Gu Yang cut the two of them off. They hastily looked toward the martial stage. The 30-mile martial stage was formed of cyan bricks, looking like one solid body. 4 pillars soared into the heavens from the 4 corners of the stage, and a bright light enveloped the martial stage, keeping everyone else outside. At the center, Long Chen and Kei Xinyan glared at each other. Kei Xinyan had launched a sneak attack against Long Chen's flame dragon so that he could devour it with his earth flame. But he had met with cataclysmic failure, his own flame beast being taken away from him. Now, seeing the culprit standing before him, he was full of hatred. Long Chen, rejoice that this place is the Shen Dao sect. Otherwise, I'd cut you into 1,000 pieces. However, just because I can't kill you doesn't mean I can't cripple you and make you pay the price. Long Chen looked back at Kei Xinyan and shook his head. You're just an idiot. Did you really think that this matter is so simple? You think the enmity between us is limited to an earth flame beast? You're wrong, very wrong. To stop me from getting a core disciple spot, you sneak attacked my flame dragon. Originally, that should have just been a private enmity between us. For those who walk on the path of cultivation, fierce competition and fighting is only natural. That's not wrong. But idiot, you should look at the situation. In that kind of critical moment, your actions caused the deaths of over 10,000 innocent disciples. Did you think this matter would end just like that? In this world, there's no one that can forever look down on others. Perhaps in your eyes, or perhaps in the eyes of the sect's rules, Your actions weren't a mistake. You also have an excuse to avoid punishment. But there are always people that don't tread the usual paths. For example, I don't need to use the rules to punish you, nor do I need to gather something as senseless as proof. I prefer being straightforward and direct. To me, rules are all nonsense. Now that you've come onto the martial stage, of the two of us, only one can leave alive. Long Chen's voice was ice-cold and full of unquestionable resolve. He had decided, no matter what the price was, he had to kill this idiot. Even if he had to be expelled from the Shentian Dao sect. Other than the Dragon Blood warriors, everyone else was startled. So Long Chen's previous agreement had been nothing more than a formality. His goal to kill Kei Xinyan hadn't changed. Haha, you want to kill me? Good, what a grand desire. But trash who isn't even a celestial wouldn't be able to achieve such a dream in their lifetime. Laughed Kei Xinyan. As a peak heavenly genius, he had never encountered someone arrogant enough to say they would kill him. Hu Geishan, Wang Zhen, and Fan Song sneered disdainfully. Even Hua Xiu shook her head. Big Sister Xiu, can Long Chen win? Asked Zhao Ziyan worriedly. Although Long Chen's refusal to allow her to join the Dragon Blood Legion twice made her feel bad, it didn't affect the image of Long Chen in her heart. In her eyes, Long Chen was an energetic and positive figure whose humorous way of speaking had warmed her heart. Now seeing Hu Geishan and the others' expressions, her heart sank. His chances are very low. Well, to put it more bluntly, he has no chance at all, said Hua Xiu. Are you sure? Long Chen is extremely powerful, said Zhao Ziyan. Foolish girl, although you're also a rank 5 celestial, you haven't gone through the baptism of a spirit pool. Without reaching the point of merging with heaven and earth, there are many things you don't understand. Although Long Chen is one of those stinky men, at least he's a real man, unlike those arrogant and presumptuous men who think all the world's women should be theirs. However, he isn't a celestial, and even if he encountered some kind of miracle, the difference is clear. He cannot make up for it, said Hua Xiu. Despite not having a favorable opinion of his odds, for someone who disliked men so much like Hua Xiu to say such words clearly showed that Long Chen's display after their initial conflict had won him some admiration from her. However, admiration was just admiration. She didn't think highly of his hot-headedness or his lack of intelligence. Today, even if he doesn't die, he'll at least be crippled. That's the consequences of being such a slut, sneered Wei Changhai suddenly. He had always been bitterly pursuing Zhao Ziyan, while Zhao Ziyan always hid from him, refusing to face him. Although he never encountered success, Wei Changhai didn't give up. But ever since that day when he had seen Zhao Ziyan speaking with Long Chen, things had changed. She had never spoken to him like that, nor had she ever smiled like that around him. In his fury, he had attacked Long Chen only to get repeatedly slapped in return. His hatred for Long Chen had reached an extreme level, which was why he was delighted that Long Chen would send himself to his death by challenging Kei Xinyan. Hearing Zhao Ziyan voice her worry for Long Chen, his fury ignited again. He had lost a great deal of face because of Long Chen, and even his urge to pursue Zhao Ziyan had weakened because of him. Furthermore, Zhao Ziyan now seemed to hate him as well. As for calling him a slut, it was a play on words. He was cursing Long Chen, but he was also cursing Zhao Ziyan with the word slut was usually used to curse women. But Wei Changhai didn't expect that this one word would bring a calamity onto him. He had forgotten that Hua Xiu was standing right there. Countless flower petals suddenly condensed into a spear and stabbed through Wei Changhai's heart, leaving a large hole in his chest. Clean your filthy mouth. Next time you say something like that, I'll slaughter you, said Hua Xiu coldly. No one had expected Hua Xiu to attack suddenly. Furthermore, her attack was so vicious and had come with no warning at all. She didn't give Wei Changhai any chance to dodge. That shocked everyone. Was the difference between rank 5 celestials truly so great? If Hua Xiu had wanted to kill Wei Changhai, he would already be dead. You dash. Wei Changhai was startled and infuriated, but he had only just opened his mouth when he coughed up blood. He was horrified to find that he was unable to heal his injury. With his heart destroyed and his blood pouring out, he was rapidly weakening. Hua Shiyu's attack had contained a strange energy that rendered his heavenly Tao energy ineffective. If this continued, he really would run out of blood and die. Suddenly, a large hand patted Wei Changhai's body, spreading a strange fluctuation that eliminated Hua Shiyu's energy. Only then was Wei Changhai able to use his heavenly Tao energy to heal. But even after healing the injury, he had lost a huge amount of blood and his face was as pale as paper. He stared at Hua Shiyu in terror, finally realizing how terrifying this woman was. Hua Shiyu, you went too far. Hu Geishan frowned, pulling back his hand. If it hadn't been for him, Wei Changhai would have been in trouble. As soon as Wei Changhai had said the word slut, Hu Geishan had had a bad feeling. He had been about to chide him, but it had been too late. Wei Changhai's words might have been offensive, but no matter what, he was Hu Geishan's subordinate. Even if you wanted to beat a dog, you had to see who the owner was first. Hua Shiyu's attack was also a slap to Hu Geishan's face. Do you see? This is the difference. Long Chen has no chance of victory, said Hua Shiyu to Zhao Ziyan as if she hadn't heard Hu Geishan. You. Hu Geishan's expression sank. What? Do you want to challenge me? I, Hua Shiyu, never fear any stinky man. If you want to fight, let's fight. Hua Shiyu's eyes turned cold. Hua Shiyu had always appeared like an arrogant fairy, but she had the right to be full of herself. Not only was she as beautiful as a heavenly fairy, but she also had such terrifying combat strength. Amongst the core disciples, she had defeated her silver lizard the fastest. Although the others had been holding back, Hua Shiyu had also yet to reveal her true power. At least on the surface, it seemed like she was the strongest since she had obtained her core disciple spot first. We'll have an opportunity for that later, snorted Hu Guishan before turning silent. He was extremely apprehensive of Hua Shiyu, but he wasn't afraid. It was just that now wasn't the time to make enemies. The elders frowned. How was it that the youngsters these days didn't have the slightest bit of respect anymore? Did they not see that they were right there? This scuffle drew quite a bit of attention, but their conflict didn't grow any further, so everyone's attention once more focused on the two people on the martial stage. Neither Long Chen nor Kei Xinyan had seen what was happening outside. The martial stage was special, and every one of their actions was projected so that the people outside could see it clearly. However, the ones inside were isolated from the outside world so that they could fight without any distractions. The two of them didn't know that before they started fighting, a rank 5 celestial had almost caused his own death because of one word. Long Chen, trying to anger me is useless. I'm not stupid enough to kill you, and I won't give up my future prospects because of trash like you. However, I'll crush you like the dog you are on this martial stage. Kei Xinyan suddenly clapped his hands together. Roaring rang out as a huge flame leopard appeared on the martial stage. As soon as that flame leopard appeared, it let out a heaven-shaking roar. It was now no longer 5 miles long, but 8. The other thing different from before was the light circulating inside and outside the leopard's body. Powerful pressure caused the space around it to twist. He actually hid his flame beast's power. The Dragon Blood warriors were startled. During the inner sect trial, the flame beast Kei Xinyan had summoned hadn't possessed this power. It wasn't just them. All the disciples who had participated in that trial were shocked. Originally, they had thought that the core disciples had been forced to use their full power in the core disciple trial. They hadn't thought that they had been holding back. It was clear that Kei Xinyan hadn't used his full power, or if he had shown this power back then, he probably would have been the one to obtain the first core disciple spot. Long Chen, it's too late to beg for mercy now. Today, I'll make you live a life worse than death. The flame leopard was glaring at Long Chen, and it was already beginning to store up energy. As long as Kei Xinyan gave the order, it would immediately launch an attack. Only once you were standing in front of such an enormous flame beast would you know how terrifying it was. Just its aura would make others unable to breathe. The martial stage's barrier prevented the outside world's auras from entering, but the auras inside could come out. However, due to the barrier, it didn't have any threat to the people outside. But even then, the level of its aura still made these disciples feel like there was a stone crushing their hearts. It made their hair stand on end. Do you think I'm as stupid as you? You think a single earth flame beast can make me kneel and beg? Are you sure you have a brain? Sneered Longchen. You still can't see the reality now? This earth flame beast is my true trump card. The heart-rending salamander flame you devoured is only ranked 93 on the earth flame rankings. But my heavenly net earth core blaze is ranked 85. Its power is several times that of the heart-rending salamander flame, and if I wasn't unwilling, I'd have long since let it devour my other earth flame. You really overrate yourself. Do you know how laughable you are? My things aren't so easy to devour. I will take back 10 times what you took from me. The flame leopard behind Kei Xinyan roared and suddenly launched a claw at Longchen. That claw was like a small mountain. But what shocked everyone was that Longchen didn't dodge. Instead, he sent out a punch. Boom. The entire martial stage shook. The flame leopard was forced back by Longchen's punch. As for Longchen, he was also knocked back a few hundred meters. Fool, do you think refusing to release your earth flame will save it from being devoured? Don't worry, as long as I defeat you, extracting your earth flame will be of no effort at all for me. Kei Xinyan stood with his hands clasped behind him. He had no intention of directly attacking, implying that just his flame leopard was enough to handle Longchen. Longchen didn't reply. He continued to fight with his fists against the flame leopard, but he was forced to repeatedly fall back. Will boss be all right? Asked a disciple beside Guoran. Are you joking? They're still just in the process of probing each other. Furthermore, boss's power surpasses your imagination. Just watch, replied Guoran. That flame leopard's power was absolutely shocking. Each one of its blows could shatter mountains. Watching this, the disciples all had to admire the power of a core disciple. Any of these attacks could easily kill them. But despite what Guoran said, they were worried to see Longchen repeatedly being forced back. People all had sympathy for the weak, and in their eyes, they had long since labeled Longchen the weak one. The women were especially sympathetic. Although Longchen wasn't especially handsome, red flowers always needed green leaves to set themselves off. Compared to Kei Xinyan, who arrogantly looked down upon everyone else, Longchen appeared exceptionally handsome and moving. The majority of the disciples here hadn't participated in the inner sect trial and didn't know what had happened. But just from the words between the two of them, they knew Longchen was getting revenge for people who had died because of Kei Xinyan. That made them feel even more sympathetic. You can do it, Longchen, cried a woman in the crowd suddenly. What the fuck? How am I supposed to live like this? Guoran was dumbfounded. When did his boss's charisma grow to this level? When he was a poser, he had people worship him, and when he wasn't a poser, people sympathized with him. Why was it that he didn't have the same luck? With one person taking the lead, quite a few people began to cheer for Longchen, with the majority of them being women. Tang Wan'er couldn't help but laugh. Did that scoundrel really possess this much charisma? Why was it that she had never managed to see such a thing? Stop shouting, you're annoying. The ones inside can't hear the sounds from outside, roared Han Yunshan. Seeing so many people sympathizing with Longchen, he was infuriated. Han Yunshan truly did lack brains. He didn't even understand the simple rule that he shouldn't roar at women, especially not a group of women. How could you be so coarse? If we want to cheer, we'll cheer. What does it have to do with you? Exactly, if you don't want to listen, then don't listen. By shouting even louder, aren't you just being more annoying? I can tell you're a bad person with just a look. You're definitely jealous of him. Quite a few people hadn't even been cheering at first, but because of Han Yunshan's roar, they joined in just to irritate him. You damn slewdash! Han Yunshan suddenly felt an icy killing intent lock onto him, and all his hair stood on end. Everyone looked at him oddly. Continue. Hua Xiu looked indifferently at Han Yunshan. A drop of sweat dripped off Han Yunshan's forehead and onto the ground. He felt like his back had been drenched in sweat in an instant. He had almost forgotten there was a terrifying fiend near him. Wei Changhai had almost lost his life because of his mouth. If he committed a second violation, he didn't know if there would even be a Han Yunshan in this world any longer. Han Yunshan shut his mouth, refusing to say a word. Even his lower mouth was clenched tight, as he was afraid the slightest fart might end his life. Seeing this, the flower petals around Hua Xiu slowly faded and she continued looking at the martial stage. At this time, Long Chen had been forced into a corner by the flame leopard. It roared and launched a claw at him. This time, there was nowhere to dodge. Boom! The huge claw landed on the martial stage. Quite a few people jumped, thinking Long Chen had been crushed. "What speed!" cried someone suddenly. At some unknown point, Long Chen had appeared in the air and launched a vicious kick at the flame leopard's head. The flame leopard smashed into the barrier and then rebounded back. It let out a furious roar and released a flame sphere that shot toward Long Chen. It was huge, and Long Chen didn't even have a chance to dodge before he was struck. Startled cries rang out from the disciples. This had happened too suddenly. Had Long Chen only just launched a counterattack before being killed? A dragon's cry rang out. A 10-mile flame dragon appeared and smashed apart the flame sphere with its tail. Long Chen was surrounded by flickering lightning as he floated in the air. The huge flame dragon circled around him, and a powerful aura began to rise. That was a kind of formless energy that caused the Dragon Blood warriors to burst into cheers. "Boss is finally getting serious." This aura was something the Dragon Blood warriors were familiar with. It meant that Long Chen's warm-up was finished and the true battle was about to start. When this aura permeated through the barrier, the Hall Master's expressions changed. He walks the undefeatable Tao. This aura was too clear for them. It was incomparably arrogant and domineering. Only an expert who had never once tasted defeat could possess such a thing. The disciples didn't understand what this aura signified, but it made them tremble. "You're finally willing to bring out your rations to feed my earth flame beast?" sneered Kei Xinyan. "Yes, but I'm worried your earth flame beast doesn't have the stomach for it." Long Chen extended another hand. His arm shook and another dragon cry rang out. Another 10-mile dragon appeared, this one formed of lightning. The two dragons coiled around each other, their dragon cries shaking the sky. Blazing light came from them that dazzled the people outside. How domineering! Long Chen was like a god as he stood in the midst of those two dragons. The disciples outside had seen countless experts, but they had never seen someone who appeared so domineering. Long Chen's domineeringness was not an external appearance, but something that came from his bones. It usually didn't reveal itself, but when he began to fight for real, it would unconsciously awaken. It wasn't even something that Long Chen did on purpose. It was a sign of the 9-star Hegemon body art and impossible to hide. When Long Chen circulated the 9-star Hegemon body art, that wild, domineering aura would spread. That was an aura that refused to be one with heaven and earth. The Central Plains disciples had never seen such a thing, but the Dragon Blood warriors were familiar with the sight, and their blood began to boil. The sight of Long Chen standing in the air with the two brilliant dragons around him also possessed a special effect on the women who were still in the springtime of their youth. "How handsome!" One of the Heaven Female Alliance's maidens involuntarily clenched her hands in front of her, looking worshipfully at that figure on the martial stage. "What's so handsome about a stinky man?" "You're not allowed to worship him," ordered Hua Xiu coldly. But even as she said this, she had to admit that Long Chen's current appearance was worth a second look. "You think that summoning two little pieces of crap will allow you to fight against me? Your flame dragon will be my beast's food." Kei Xinyan had absolute confidence in his earth flame beast. "Show him just who is the food," ordered Long Chen. Hua Long and Lei Long both roared and charged at Kei Xinyan's flame beast. "Devour them!" Kei Xinyan also gave his flame beast an order. The flame leopard roared and pounced. Originally, the flame and lightning dragons had been flying separately. But on the way, they suddenly coiled around each other, forming a flame and lightning twister. Boom! Flames and lightning erupted, instantly filling the entire barrier. The disciples outside were unable to see the situation inside any longer as all they saw was chaos. But even standing outside, they could feel the ground constantly shaking. "What's going on inside?" cried some of the disciples. The elder hall master muttered to himself and slowly extended his hands. Forming 3 hand seals, the martial stage and the barrier began to rapidly expand. The disciples cried out in shock and hastily fell back. In just a few breaths, the martial stage had grown by 10 times. As it expanded, the scene inside grew clearer. They saw a lightning and flame dragon fighting intensely against a flame leopard. Each time their huge bodies collided, it would cause the ground to shake. It was an incredibly crazy and fierce fight that shocked all of them. Kei Xinyan hadn't expected that Long Chen's flame and lightning dragons would be able to contend evenly with his earth flame beast. For the moment, there was no way to determine victory or defeat. That was completely different from the result he had imagined. He thought that Long Chen's flame dragon wouldn't have had time to completely refine his first earth flame yet. And even if it had, its power would only barely be able to match the heart-rending salamander flame. It definitely would not surpass it. That was because Long Chen's flame dragon's power had been weaker. Even after devouring it, its power would not surpass the heart-rending salamander flame. As for the current earth flame beast, it was ranked 85th, and it was much, much stronger than the heart-rending salamander flame. It would be able to easily devour it. He had always been hesitating about whether or not he should allow his heavenly net earth core blaze to devour his heart-rending salamander flame. That would strengthen the heavenly net earth core blaze, but he had never been willing to do so as both these earth flames had cost him endless sweat and blood to raise. Of course, he had never imagined that one would be devoured by Long Chen. So now, Kei Xinyan wanted the heavenly net earth core blaze to devour Long Chen's flame dragon. That would be like devouring 2 earth flames for the price of 1. But then he was startled to find that the flame dragon was stronger than he had imagined. Although its actual power was at most a match for the heart-rending salamander flame, it actually possessed battle tactics and knew how to cooperate with the lightning dragon to attack. That was the thing that Kei Xinyan found most unbelievable. Although earth flames had spirits, their intelligence was extremely limited. Everything they did occurred instinctively, and being able to listen to a few simple orders was the limit. But Long Chen's lightning and flame dragons were extremely smart and knew how to cooperate. It was only through this cooperation that they managed to fight evenly against his flame leopard whose power far surpassed theirs. What Kei Xinyan didn't know was that Long Chen's earth flame had been harvested while it had been extremely young and immature. There had been great room for growth and molding, and as a result of Long Chen's attention and care, it was extremely devoted to him. But Kei Xinyan's earth flames were different. They had been forcibly subdued with secret arts when they had already been fully mature. They didn't dare to refuse his orders, and as a result, there were many things that couldn't be communicated. Earth flames would normally slowly mature in well-hidden regions during their youth. They wouldn't be easily noticed, and when they dared to go out, they were mostly fully matured. So it was very difficult to find immature earth flames. Furthermore, Kei Xinyan was startled by the lightning dragon. Since it was formed of lightning, it wasn't afraid of the flame leopard tearing at it. Even if it bit off a piece of its body, all it got were some lightning runes. The flame leopard was unable to devour lightning runes, and those runes would return to the lightning dragon's body eventually. While the lightning dragon was the main fighter, the flame dragon would constantly nip and bite at the flame leopard, occasionally managing to get a bite. Although there was no way for it to immediately digest that energy and strengthen itself, a flame beast that lost its core runes would gradually weaken. 1 or 2 bites wasn't a big problem, but if it continued, his flame leopard would only grow weaker, and sooner or later, it would be completely devoured. So the reason you allowed yourself to be entangled with my earth flame beast was to figure out its attack patterns and weaknesses. Kei Xinyan clenched his teeth. He knew he had been schemed against. Seeing this situation, it was all too clear. The 2 dragons were cooperating perfectly, while his flame leopard was unable to strike them. Instead, it was constantly being bitten by the flame dragon, and when it went to attack the flame dragon, the lightning dragon would stop it. When the people outside heard this, they finally understood why Long Chen had been forced back repeatedly by the flame leopard. As for when he had kicked away the flame leopard, he must have already figured out all there was to figure out about the flame leopard and hadn't wanted to waste any more time. Don't you think saying that now is a bit meaningless? Bring out your full power. This isn't a game, nor is it the time to be a poser. This is revenge, said Long Chen. Ha ha. Kei Xinyan raised his head and laughed. He was completely infuriated now. Long Chen kept saying he would get revenge on him, and now he was tired of hearing it. Just as he was about to speak, pow! A large hand came from a strange angle and struck Kei Xinyan while he wasn't expecting it at all. The huge power behind it sent him flying. This face-slapping art is probably unrivaled beneath the heavens, sighed the elder hallmaster. All the hallmasters, other than the law enforcement hallmaster, nodded inside. This move of Long Chen's had already touched upon the realm of a natural Tao. From the moment he launched it to the point it struck, it was flawless as if it had been created by the heavens. Even for them, this was the first time seeing such a face-slapping art. The disciples that were just watching for fun were startled, but they mostly found it comedic. A Grand Rank 5 Celestial was actually slapped in the face. Bastard, I'll kill you, roared Kei Xinyan. Probably, anyone on his level would be unable to bear being slapped in the face like this. This was the only time he had ever been slapped in the face. 5 colored runes erupted, forming chains in the air. The chains were constantly moving like thousands of tentacles. It looked like there was a huge 5-colored spider web behind Kei Xinyan. But as soon as it appeared, all the disciples' expressions changed. How is this possible? They were horrified to find that in that instant, they were unable to sense any heavenly Tao energy. It was like the world's heavenly Tao energy had all been sucked away by Kei Xinyan. As for Kei Xinyan, it was practically possible to see heavenly Tao energy poured toward him like hundreds of streams. His aura was crazily climbing. Do you see it? This is the difference. That's why I said Long Chen has no chance. A celestial who has reached the realm of merging with heaven and earth can instantly absorb all the heavenly Tao energy around them for their own use. Unless others have also reached the realm of merging with heaven and earth, they'll find themselves without any energy. Just how are they supposed to fight? Sighed Hua Xiyu. It wasn't just Zhao Ziyan she was talking to. All the disciples heard it. Over 99% of them hadn't known about this, as they didn't have the qualifications to know about such a thing. Seeing Kei Xinyan's aura rapidly climbing, they felt a profound sense of helplessness. Although they were also celestials, they were completely suppressed. As for Han Yunshan, Wei Changhai, and Yen Machen, they finally understood just how great the difference was between them and these monsters. Long Chen, now do you understand the difference between us? A piece of trash like you isn't even fit to carry my shoes. Hurry up and die. Once Kei Xinyan's aura reached an unprecedented level, raging chi waves continuously poured out of him. All I know is that the difference between us is that one is a person and the other is an idiot. Today, I'll let you see just how great the difference between a person and an idiot is. Divine Ring. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.